Believe it or not, my dear listener, but there was a time when my friend Father Brown neither enjoyed, if such a sentiment can be attributed to so modest an individual, nor for a moment anticipated the fame which his later adventures as a detective would have thrust upon him. My story belongs to that particular period of the past. It is derived partly from scraps of reminiscence let drop by Father Brown himself, partly from information gleaned from other sources, and in some degree, I must confess, from the exercise of my own imagination. To my mind, the episode is significant in that it marked not only a milestone in Father Brown's career, but the start of an improbable friendship which was to have considerable influence upon the course of his life. In order that you may form some visual impression of the subject of my story, I should tell you that Father Brown was a small, rotund man with a mild manner, a face as round as a Norfolk dumpling, and eyes of deceptive innocence. Above his clerical habit, he wore a black shovel hat and invariably carried a large, shabby umbrella. At that time, he was parish priest in a small Essex village, which accounts for his presence on the crowded boat train from Harwich one fine autumn morning. Among the folk descending the gangway that day, one passenger stood out by reason of his singular height and huge proportions, coupled with the fact that he wore the garb and shovel hat of a priest of the Catholic Church. Crossing the platform with all the confidence of a seasoned traveller, he settled himself in the corner of a second-class compartment of the waiting train.
Oh, excuse me, sir, but I fancy you're sitting on the tail of my little boy's coat.
Oh, I beg your pardon, madame.
Oh, it's quite all right, sir. You move along a bit now. Come nearer me, Tommy. Give the reverend gentleman more room. There. That's better, ain't it, sir?
Thank you. You are most kind.
Might I trouble you for the right time, sir? I notice you're wearing a watch.
Certainly. It's precisely 9:30.
Thank you. You wouldn't happen to know when we're due at Liverpool Street?
No, I'm afraid not. You see,
Oh, about 11:20, I reckon. Leastways, that's what the young fellow in the ticket office said.
Dear me, I hadn't realized it took so long.
Oh, well, the train stopped several times on the way, like. Picking up passengers, you see.
Ah, yes, I understand.
Morning, all. Any room for a little one? Come on, Rover, boy. Get in.
Now, Tommy.
No objection to the dog, I take it. Oh, quiet as a lamb, we be. Under the seat, Rover, all that. There.
Oh.
Good boy. My word. That were a narrow squeak, weren't we? You caught it by the skin of my teeth. I was sort of rushing you, was I?
Wyndham! Wyndham! This is Wyndham! Change here for Braintree! Wyndham!
Oh, good morning, Father Brown.
Good morning, Tom.
Can you get in?
I'm rather leaving this morning, I'm afraid.
Morning, passes are yours, sir. Don't want to leave them behind, do you?
Oh, no. I mustn't do that, must I?
You'll be all right now, sir.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, I'll be all right. Oh, how careless of me. No, I do beg your pardon, ma'am. But you see, Oh, bless my soul, there's another of them. Oh, dear me. There goes my umbrella now. Oh, a dog, eh? Oh, I do hope I didn't wake him. Yes. Oh, brother, this is too much.
Here, let me lend a hand, your reverence.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, you'd have your own pretty full.
Yes, I do.
There's plenty of room in the rack for your parcel, see?
Ah, yes, most thoughtful of you. So kind of you.
Let's have that one, then.
No, not that one, please. No, that's a very precious parcel. You see, it has silver in it, you see. Something made of real silver. Silver with blue stones. I will be very careful with that one. I'd better keep it on my knees. Just to say, if I may sit down. Oh, dear me, I never thought the train would be so full.
Oh, there's a place to the side. Here, sir, my little boy. Sit on my lap. Now, Tommy, get up.
That's
Get up.
very kind.
Give the reverend gentleman your seat there.
So much, yes. Oh, yeah.
Better, sir.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Well, you see, it's most important that I don't let this parcel out of my sight. Otherwise, I might forget it, mightn't I? Church property, you know. The Eucharistic Congress at Westminster. Oh, I beg your pardon, sir. I'm afraid I'm encroaching on you. This parcel of mine is of such very awkward proportions.
Oh, not at all. Let it rest on my knee. We should all help to bear each other's burdens, should we not? Particularly men of our cloth.
Dear me, oh, I do apologize. In my confusion, I hadn't noticed your clerical habit. Birds of a feather, are we not? Allow me to introduce myself. Brown is my name. Parish priest of Little Soken.
Van Hust, deacon.
Oh, I'm delighted to make your acquaintance, sir.
Oh, the pleasure is mine.
You come from abroad, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, from Utrecht.
Ah, Utrecht. That is in the Netherlands, is it not?
Ah, that is so. A beautiful city.
I envy you. I've had little opportunity for travel myself.
No?
But I have visited Rome.
Indeed.
Yes, indeed. I shall never forget my first sight of St. Peter's. The magnificence, the sheer immensity of it all. Supreme triumph of man's creation. And of God's, of course.
Of course.
So different from my own small church of Little Soken. Would it be inquisitive of me to inquire what brings you to England at this time?
The same mission as your own, I suspect.
Eucharistic Congress?
Just so.
Dear me, what a strange coincidence that we should meet here in this train and on the same pilgrimage. Of course, as an obscure parish priest, I do not expect to play any great part in the deliberations at Westminster. Or, for that matter, any part at all, save that of humble spectator. But it is my privilege to be on this occasion the bearer of a gift, which I hope may bring pleasure to our brethren there assembled.
Indeed. May I ask what form this present takes?
Certainly. It is contained in this very parcel. It is, in fact, a cross.
A cross?
A very ancient cross, wrought most exquisitely in silver and inset with precious blue stones of great rarity. Oh, it's a most beautiful thing, believe me, and one of great historic interest.
Historic, you say?
Yes, indeed.
And probably of immense value.
Oh, yes, sir.
You intrigue me greatly. I have some knowledge of such treasures indeed. I am regarded by my friends as being rather more than a mere amateur in that field. I think I may even claim to be, in my own small way, an ardent collector of objets d'art.
A most rewarding hobby, I have no doubt.
Rewarding? Ah, yes. But pray, tell me more about this cross. Its history, for example.
Oh, with pleasure. Well, you should first know that some little time ago, dangerous cracks appeared in the fabric of our east wall at Little Soken. And it became necessary to reinforce the ancient foundations of the church.
Continue, please. I am all ears.
Well, in the course of the extensive excavations which followed, one of the workmen struck his pick against some hard metal obstruction, which at first he was quite unable to identify.
Yes?
And further digging unearthed an object wrapped in layer upon layer of thick sacking. Now, when these wrappings were removed, the rough outlines of an antique cross were revealed. Tarnish and the passage of time had done their work, of course, and it was only after much careful cleaning and expert examination that the true value of our discovery became evident. It is this self-same cross that I am now carrying to Westminster.
The Assistant Commissioner will see you now, sir.
Thank you.
Come in.
Inspector Valentin, sir.
Come in, Valentin, my dear fellow. Glad to see you.
Commissioner.
Constable, bring a chair for the inspector. Will you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sit down. Make yourself at home.
Thank you.
What brings you to Scotland Yard on this fine morning?
I can answer you in one word, Colonel. Flambeau.
Flambeau.
Yes, Flambeau. He's in England.
Oh, not again.
You remember him then?
As if I could forget him. And what is our arch-villain up to this time?
It seems that once again our friend Flambeau has given the sûreté, the slip.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It appears that they tracked him from Paris to Gand, from there to Brussels, and finally to the Hook of Holland.
Mm-hmm.
After lying low for a day or two, he succeeded in crossing the channel by last night's ferry boat from the Hook. He should have arrived at Harwich early this morning, and by this time is almost certainly somewhere in London.
And now it's up to you to find him.
That is my task. Will you permit it if I smoke a cigarette?
Oh, of course, go ahead. No use my offering you one of mine. I know you only smoke Cabaret. Any idea of why Flambeau should be here? You said you had a theory.
I have. The Eucharistic Congress now taking place in London. You know about it, naturally.
Naturally, it'll be hard to avoid knowing. The streets of Westminster are black with clerics of every shape, size, and nationality, from cardinals, bishops, and monsignori to the most youthful of pink-cheeked deacons. Let's give my fellows quite a job sorting out their various problems. Most of these reverend gentlemen have never set foot in London before.
Precisely. That is why it occurred to me that our friend may have taken advantage of the arrival of so many strangers and chosen this particular moment to slip into the country unnoticed.
I take your point, Inspector.
He would, I imagine, most probably travel as some minor clerk or secretary connected with the Congress. In the unfamiliarity and general confusion, the presence of one more strange face would pass without comment.
He'll be dressed as a priest, you think?
I do.
Can you be sure?
Nobody can be sure about Flambeau. But he's a master of disguise, and nothing would amuse him more than to mingle with these clerical gentry as one of themselves. Fortunately for us, there's one thing which, with all his dexterity of disguise, he cannot conceal. His great height.
Stands something like 6'4" in his socks, doesn't he?
He does.
But, Valentin, our friend, you're not telling me that Flambeau has come to London merely to satisfy an overdeveloped sense of humor?
Certainly not, Colonel. In an assembly such as this Congress, there should be rich pickings for a man of his ingenuity and discernment. Apart from the personal trappings of the prelates, the croziers, the insignia, the rings, the cathedral itself houses a collection of immensely valuable church plate, gold, silver, and the like. Some of this will be on display throughout the Congress.
Thank you for the warning, Inspector. Well, naturally, we're keeping a close eye on things, but it's as well to know from which quarter danger may threaten. But tell me now, how can I assist you?
If things go well, I may need to call upon the service of 2 of your men, one at least of inspector's rank. I cannot say when the occasion may arise, but I shall need authority from you to summon help when it comes.
Nothing easier, my dear fellow. I'll write out a note to that effect right away. You're sure 2 men will suffice?
Oh, that number should be ample.
Here you are, Inspector. This should meet your requirements.
Thank you, sir.
Where do you propose to begin your search? The cathedral? It's the obvious place.
With Flambeau, nothing is obvious. For him, it is always the unforeseen. I shall seek him out in the most unlikely places. I'll probably take a look inside the cathedral, just in case.
Well, it could be anywhere, of course. It'll be nothing less than a miracle if you run into him.
I agree, Colonel. But the most incredible thing about miracles is that they sometimes happen. Oh, dear me, so late. Well, sir, I mustn't occupy your valuable time any longer. I'm greatly obliged to you for your help.
A pleasure, my dear fellow. Anything we can do, you know. Good day to you, and the best of luck.
Well, a man must begin somewhere. And the cathedral's as good a start as any, I suppose. Not much hope of spotting my man in this vast multitude. Tall priests, short priests, fat ones and thin, and nothing to be seen from here save their backsides. Better try my luck from higher up. Oh yes, these steps should lead up to the gallery. Of course, I could be wrong. He may not be passing himself off as a priest at all. That was pure conjecture on my part. He could be anything from a tall tramp on Wimbledon Common to a tall toastmaster at a fashionable hotel. For all I know, he may not even be in London. However, let us see what there is to be seen. A sea of heads. Heads with hair and heads as bald as billiard balls. Heads uplifted and heads cast down. Heads that bob and heads that bow. And I can't catch a glimpse of a single face. It would be reasonable to suppose that he might be numbered amongst this congregation, but with Flambeau, one does better to follow the train of the unreasonable. That is more likely to lead to his eventual discovery. Yes, my best chance lies in seeking him out in the most improbable locations, ignoring all the right places and searching only the wrong. A shop that stands empty, a cul-de-sac that leads to nowhere, some obscure little restaurant or cafe which no one in his senses would dream of entering. Oh, a restaurant, that reminds me. I had no time for breakfast this morning, and I'd give anything for a cup of coffee. If the search is to be a long one cannot afford to neglect the inner man. A restaurant, then. A modest one for choice. There must be many such in this vicinity. Pimlico is noted for such places.
Your coffee, sir.
Ah, thank you, waiter.
Is there anything else you would care for?
Yes, there is. Bring me a poached egg, if you please.
Certainly, sir. One egg or two?
Oh, one will do.
On toast?
Certainly on toast.
Very good, sir.
I had no idea I was feeling so hungry. Now, where's the sugar? Ah, here we are. That Flambeau. I wonder what he's up to at the moment. The trouble with him is that you can never tell. A slippery customer, that one, and no fool either. Oh, he has a brain, all right. But mine's just as good. There's always one danger, of course. As I never stop telling my young chaps at the Sûreté, the criminal is the creative artiste, I say to them. The detective is only the critic. Oh, nom de Dieu. I must have put salt in this coffee instead of sugar. But that is a sugar basin, all right. Only it's full of salt. And yet, there's a salt cellar just beside it. Sugar. Salt where the sugar should be, and sugar where one would expect to find the salt. What manner of place is this, where they put salt in the sugar basins and sugar in the salt cellars? There must be some explanation for such a singular exchange. Waiter?
Coming, sir, coming. I'm sorry to keep you waiting, sir. Here's your poached egg now, sir.
Never mind my poached egg. Test this.
Taste which, sir?
What's in this sugar basin? Go on.
It's salt.
Of course it's salt. But what is it doing in the sugar basin?
That I do not know, sir.
Do you play this delicate joke on your customers every morning?
No, sir. Excuse me. I will fetch the proprietor at once.
What an amazing thing. Yet except for this singular eccentricity with the sugar and the salt, the place appears neat, and apart from that dark splash on the wall, clean and ordinary enough. Puzzling. Distinctly puzzling.
I'm sorry to hear of your complaint, sir. I can't account for the matter at all. Excuse me. Yes, this is certainly salt in the basin and sugar in the salt cellar. Well, I'm at a loss to find an explanation. I'm completely dumbfounded.
Sir.
Yes, what is it, Angelo?
I think it is those two clergymen.
What two clergymen?
The two clergymen that threw soup at the wall.
Oh.
Threw soup at the wall?
You see, that splash on the wall there. That is where they threw the soup.
Yes, sir, it's quite true. Though I don't suppose it has anything to do with the sugar and salt. You see, two clergymen came in and drank soup very soon after we'd opened for the day. Well, they were both very quiet, respectable people, and the only thing remarkable about them was that both wore shovel hats, while one was very short and the other very tall.
Tall, you say? How tall?
Oh, well over 6 foot, certainly. Yes, one of them paid the bill and went out. The other, who seemed a slower coach altogether, was some minutes longer getting his things together. But he went at last, only the instant before he stepped into the street, he deliberately picked up his cup, which he'd only half emptied, and threw the soup slap on the wall.
Which one? Which one threw the soup? Come, tell me.
Oh, I can't remember. You see, I was in the back room when it happened, and so was the waiter. I could only rush out in time to find the walls splashed and the shop empty. Well, it didn't do any particular damage, but it was confounded cheek. I tried to catch the men in the street, but they were too far off. I only noticed that they went round the corner into Carstairs Road.
Carstairs Road? Where's that?
That's first on your left as you go out of the door.
Quick, my hat and stick. I must be off.
Going, sir, but your poached egg.
Damn my poached egg. Just give me my bill.
It's there, beside you on the table, sir.
Oh, yes, so it is. Here's half a crown. You may keep the change, my man.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. Good day, sir.
Good day. First left, he said. This must be the street, then. It's unlikely they linger here, but it may lead to some clue. That shop I just passed, the greengrocer's. There was something unusual about it, something that caught my eye. What could it have been? I'll go back and look. Ah, yes, I was right. Very strange. A heap of nuts labeled best tangerine oranges to a penny. And on this pile of oranges, in bold blue chalk, finest Brazil nuts, 4 pence a pound. A highly subtle form of humor, which I fancy I've encountered quite recently. Excuse me, sir.
Hello.
Are you aware that your sales cards appear to have become mixed?
What do you mean, mixed?
Take a look.
Well, I'll eat chicken. Oh, super, that right.
Forgive the apparent irrelevance, my good sir, but I should like to ask you a question.
Well?
Why, may I ask, are 2 tickets placed in a greengrocer's shop like a shovel hat which has come to London for a holiday?
Yeah. Is this some kind of riddle?
I'll put it another way, if you like. What is the mystical association which connects the idea of nuts marked as oranges with the idea of 2 clergymen, one tall and the other short?
Well, I don't know what you have to do with it, but if you're one of their friends, you can tell them from me that I'll knock their silly heads off, parsons or no parsons, if they upset my apples again.
Indeed. Did they upset your apples?
Well, one of them did. Rolled them all over the street. I'd have caught the fool but for having to pick them up.
Which way did these parsons go?
Up that second road on the right hand, sir, and then across the square.
Thanks. I'm much obliged to you. Ah, there's a police officer. Perhaps he'll have noticed them. Constable, this is urgent. Have you seen 2 clergymen in shovel hats?
I have, sir. And if you ask me, one of them was drunk. He stood in the middle of the road, that bewildered.
Which way did they go?
They took one of them yellow buses over there. Them that goes to Hampstead.
I'm Inspector Valentin, Paris Sûreté. Here's my official card and authority.
Oh, yes, sir. How can I help you?
Call up 2 of your men to come in pursuit, quick as you can.
As easy done as said, sir. There's one of our inspectors on the other side of the road. If you'll wait here a second, I'll fetch him over. This is the gent, Inspector. Well, sir, and what can we do?
I'll tell you on top of that omnibus, Inspector. Come on, follow me, and bring the constable with you.
I saw very well, but I'm supposed... You heard what the gentleman said. Come on and look sharp about it.
You know, we could go 4 times as quick in a taxi.
Quite true. If we only had an idea of where we were going.
Yeah, well, where are we going?
If you know what a man's doing, get in front of him. But if you want to guess what he's doing, keep behind him. Stray when he strays, stop when he stops. Travel as slowly as he. Then you may see what he saw and may act as he acted. All we can do, Inspector, is to keep our eyes skinned for a strange thing.
Oh, what sort of strange thing do you mean?
Any sort of strange thing.
Yeah.
No, my dear Brown, one of the strangest things we've discovered about ourselves is that we are both blessed with the same sense of humor.
So it would appear.
Oh, take no notice, my friend.
I have no intention of doing so. Oh, besides, I left a large enough tip to pay for the damage.
You mean to say you poked your umbrella through that window, having first left the money to pay for it?
I do.
Oh, that's wretched, upon my word. And did you see the fellow's face? Anyhow, they served up a first-rate meal. No, this way, my friend, and up the hill. I know a quiet little spot where we can very well resume our interesting discussion. You know, my dear Brown, your interpretation of theology...
Imagine in your mind's eye, dear listener, the sight of that yellow omnibus crawling slowly on up towards the northern heights of the great city. As London died away in a succession of draggled taverns and dreary scrubs, the long roads of the northern suburbs seemed to shoot out into length after length, like an infernal telescope. It was like one of those journeys on which a man feels that now at last he must have come to the end of the universe, and then finds he has only come to the beginning of Tufnell Park. By the time they'd left Camden Town behind them, the 2 policemen were already half asleep. Then suddenly, Valentin leapt up and struck a hand on each man's shoulder.
Wake up! Wake up! Did you hear? Driver! Stop the bus, if you please. We have to get off. Quick, my friends. Follow me.
Look, Inspector. Over there.
What's up? I can't see anything strange.
That restaurant on the other side. The place with the broken window. Our clue at last.
Look, what proof is there that broken window pane has anything to do with them?
Proof? Good God. Don't you see that we must either follow one wild possibility or go home to bed? Come on. In any case, it's high time we all had something to eat. Waiter, the bill, if you please.
Coming right up, sir. Here we are, sir. I think you'll find everything all fine and correct.
Thank you. Got your window broken, I see.
Yes, sir. Very odd thing, that was. Very odd.
Indeed. Tell us about it.
Well...
No. Keep the change.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. Well, you see, 2 gents in black come in. Foreigners, I reckon. 2 of them parsons that are running around. They had a cheap lunch. One of them paid for it and went out. The other one was just going out to join him when I looked at me change again. I found he'd paid me more than 3 times too much. Here, I says to the chap who was nearly out the door by this time. Here, I says, you've paid me too much. Oh, have we? He said, very cool. Yes, I says, and I picks up the bill to show him. Well, that was a knockout.
What do you mean?
I could have sworn that I'd put 4 shillings on the bill. But now I saw I'd put 14 shillings, as plain as paint.
Well, and then?
Well, the parson at the door, he says, sorry to confuse your accounts, but it'll pay for the window. What window, I says. The one I'm gonna break now, he says. And with that, he smashes a blessed pane with his umbrella.
Good heavens. Well, never. Are we after escaped lunatics?
Well, I was so knocked silly for a second, I couldn't do nothing. Man marched out of the place and joined his friend. Then they went so quick up Bullock Street that I couldn't catch 'em, though I ran out into the road as fast as I could.
Come on, the two of you. We're on their tracks at last.
Get a move on, Wilkins. Don't lag behind.
It's me feet, Inspector. They're killing me.
Yeah, well, never mind your feet. Pull yourself together, Ballard. Remember, you're a police officer.
I'll do my best, sir, but we must have walked miles.
Any idea of where we are, Inspector? It's difficult to tell in this light, sir. I reckon if we go on as we are, we'll strike some part of Hampstead Heath eventually.
And that's where they're making for, without a doubt.
And we better make inquiries again, sir. Somebody may remember seeing them.
Why not? There's nothing like confirmation to encourage hounds, even on a hot scent. That little sweet shop, for instance, with the gas-lit window. Come, let us inquire within.
Oh, good evening, sir. Can I help you?
If you would be so kind. We were wondering...
Close that door behind you, Constable.
Yes, sir.
Oh, the police, is it? Well, if you've come about that parcel, I've sent it off already.
Parcel?
I mean the parcel the gentleman left, the clergyman gentleman.
For goodness sake, mademoiselle, tell us what happened exactly.
Well, two clergymen come in about half an hour ago, brought some peppermints and talked a bit, and then went off towards the heath.
The heath, you say?
Yes, but a second after, one of them runs back into the shop and says, "Have I left a parcel?"
And had he?
Well, I looked everywhere and I couldn't see one, so he says, "Never mind, but if it should turn up, please post it to this address." And he left me the address and a shilling for my trouble.
And did it turn up?
Yes, sure enough, though I thought I'd looked everywhere. I found he had left a brown paper parcel, so I posted it to the place he said. Someone in Westminster it was, though I can't remember exactly. But the thing seemed so important, I thought perhaps the police had come about it.
So they have. Is Hampstead Heath near here?
Straight on for 15 minutes, and you come right out in the open.
Thank you, mademoiselle. You've been most helpful. Come, Inspector. We've no time to lose.
The street they threaded was so narrow and shut in by shadows that when they came out unexpectedly onto the void common, they were startled to find the evening still so clear. What was left of daylight lay in a golden glitter across the edge of that popular hollow which is called the Vale of Health. The holiday-makers who roamed this region had not wholly dispersed. A few couples sat shapelessly on benches, and here and there a distant girl still shrieked on the swings. The glory of heaven deepened and darkened around the sublime vulgarity of man. And standing on the slope and looking across the valley, Valentin beheld the thing which he sought. Two figures clad in clerical black, the one much smaller than the other.
There they are, on the other side of the veil. That's our man, Inspector, the taller of the two. Come, make haste, or we may lose them in the gathering shadows.
But even as he hurried forward so confidently, Inspector Valentin felt obliged to ask himself a number of puzzling questions.
It's all very well, but what's the explanation of it all? It's not surprising that an actor like Flambeau, dressed as a priest, should lead some silly little unsuspecting sheep of a clergyman to Hampstead Heath, but with what purpose? And what has he to do with chucking soup at the wallpaper, or calling nuts oranges, or with paying for windows first and then breaking them? And how does a brown paper parcel come into it? It seems that I've arrived at the end of a chase, but I've somehow missed the middle of it. When I've failed in the past, and I seldom have, I've usually grasped the clue, but nevertheless missed the criminal. Now it seems I'm about to grasp the criminal, but still cannot grasp the clue.
The two figures that they followed were crawling like black flies across the green contour of a hill. They were evidently sunk in conversation, and perhaps did not notice that they were walking towards the wilder and more silent heights of the heath.
Careful how you go, or they may hear us.
Beg pardon, sir. It's them boots of mine. Can't control themselves.
We must get nearer, and without being observed. Better get behind that holly bush.
They've sat down the bench, sir. I can just make out the pair of them. Against the trees. After me, Wilkins. Come on. Right, sir. There. Ready? Yes. Then down on our bellies, we must crawl towards them through the long grass. Right. En avant, then. Forward. Quiet now.
Oh, what is it now, Wilkins? Me helmet, Inspector. It's got caught in a bramble. Then take it off and carry it, man. Quiet.
Ah, yes. But who can look at those millions of worlds beyond and not feel that there may well be wonderful universes where reason is utterly unreasonable?
No, reason is always reasonable, even in the lost borderland of things. I know that people charge the church with lowering reason, but it's just the other way. Alone on earth, the church affirms that God himself is bound by reason.
Yet who knows? If in that infinite universe...
Only infinite physically, not infinite in the sense of escaping from the laws of truth. No, reason and justice...
Well, they seem harmless enough, those two old parsons.
Look up at those
Oh, that talk's a bit above me.
Don't they look as if
You
they
sure
were
you haven't made a
single
mistake,
diamond?
sir? No, it's not possible.
Well, you can imagine any mad botany or geology, and please, and think of forests of adamant with leaves of brilliance, on plains of opal, under cliffs cut out of pearl, you would still find a notice board, "Thou shalt not steal."
Sounds like he's preaching a sermon to
The
me.
mystery of heaven is unfathomable. But I, for one, can only bow my head. Now just hand over that sapphire cross of yours, will you? Did you not hear me? You see, I am not the man you took me for. I am Flambeau.
Flambeau. I was right.
Come. Will you give me that cross?
No.
No? No. You won't give it me, you little celibate simpleton. And shall I tell you why? Because I've got it already in my own breast pocket.
Are you sure?
Yes, you turnip. I am quite sure. I had the sense to make a duplicate of the right parcel. And now, my friend, you've got the duplicate and I've got the jewels. An old dodge, Father Brown. A very old dodge.
Yes, I've heard of it before.
You have heard of it? Where?
Well, I mustn't tell you his name, of course. He was a penitent, you know. He had lived prosperously for about 20 years entirely on duplicate paper parcels. And so, when I began to suspect you, I thought of this poor chap at once.
Began to suspect me?
Indeed.
Did you really have the gumption to suspect me just because I brought you up to this bare part of the heath?
Oh, no. You see, I suspected you when we first met. You were far too interested in the cross I was carrying. But really what gave you away was that little bulge up the sleeve where you people wear the spiked bracelet.
How in Tartarus did you ever hear of the spiked bracelet?
Oh, one's little flock, you know. When I was curate in Hartlepool, there were 3 of them with spiked bracelets. So, as I suspected you from the start, I made sure that the cross should go safe anyhow. I'm afraid I watched you, and I saw you change the parcels. Then, don't you see, I changed them back again, and then I left the right one behind.
Left it behind?
Yes, in that sweet shop, do you remember? I went back and asked if I'd left a parcel, and I gave them a particular address if it turned up. Of course, I knew I hadn't, but when I went away again, I did leave a parcel. So instead of running after me with it, they've sent it flying to a friend of mine in Westminster. I learnt that, too, from a poor fellow in Hartlepool. He used to do it with handbags he stole at railway stations. But he's in a monastery now. One gets to know, you know. We can't help it, being priests. People come and tell us these things.
I don't believe you for a moment, but I can soon make sure. Nothing but paper. Paper and sticks of lead. Oh!
Do you believe me now?
No, I do not. I don't believe a pumpkin like you could manage all that. I believe you've still got this stuff on you. And if you don't give it up, we're all alone here. I'll take it by force.
No, you won't take it by force. First, because I really haven't still got it. And second, as I've just this moment observed, we are not alone.
What the devil do you mean?
Exactly what the reverend gentleman said, Flambeau. You are most definitely not alone.
Inspector Valentin. You here?
Yes, and with 2 strong policemen to back me up. No, stay where you are, Flambeau. The game is up.
It is my duty to warn you, sir, that anything you say
All right,
may be taken
Inspector,
down.
let me deal with this. Now, Flambeau, I
How
understand.
the devil do you come to be here?
Might I be allowed to tell him, Mr. Inspector?
If you wish.
You asked Monsieur Flambeau, how did these gentlemen come here? Well, I think I may claim to have brought them.
You?
How did I do it, you may ask? Well, I'll tell you if you like. Lord bless you, we have to know 20 such things when we work among the criminal classes.
Oh.
You see, I couldn't be sure you were a thief, and it would never do to make a scandal against one of our own clergy. So, I tested you.
Tested me?
To see if anything would make you show yourself. You see, a man generally makes a small scene if he finds salt in his coffee. If he doesn't, he's some reason for keeping quiet. A man generally objects if his bill is 3 times too big. I altered your bill, and you paid it.
What on earth are you talking about?
Then, as you wouldn't leave any tracks for the police, somebody had to. At every place we went to, I took care to do something that would get us talked about for the rest of the day. I didn't do much harm. A splashed wall, spilt apples, a broken window. But I saved the cross, as the cross will always be saved. It is at Westminster by now. I rather wonder why you didn't stop it with the donkey's whistle.
With the what?
I'm glad you've never heard of the donkey's whistle. It's a foul thing, a murderous weapon. But if you've never heard of it, you can't have gone so very wrong yet.
How in blazes do you know of such things?
Oh, by being a celibate simpleton, I suppose. Has it never struck you, Flambeau, that a man who does next to nothing but hear men's real sins is not unlikely to be wholly unaware of evil? But as a matter of fact, another part of my trade, too, made me sure you weren't a priest.
And what was that?
You attacked reason. That is bad theology.
And there you are, Flambeau. You've heard what the gentleman had to say. Now I must ask you to accompany us, and I advise you to make no attempt at escape.
Very well, Inspector Valentin. I know when I am beaten. I am, I hope, an artist and a sportsman. I congratulate you and bow to your superior skill and judgment.
Do not bow to me, mon ami. Rather, let us both bow to our master.
You mean, Father?
Precisely.
With the greatest pleasure.
Your Reverence.
Thank you very much. But I wonder, has either of you 2 gentlemen seen my umbrella? I seem to have mislaid it in the darkness.
That was The Blue Cross, adapted from the G.K. Chesterton novel by Archie Campbell. You heard William Rushton as the narrator, Leslie French as Father Brown, Francis de Wolfe as Flambeau, and Neville Jason as Inspector Valentin. Other parts were played by Betty Huntley-Wright, Brian Haynes, Leslie Heritage, Hugh Ross, Stephen Thorne, Kevin Brennan, Eric Allen, and William Slay. The production was by Christopher Venning.
Today's story is called The Mirror of the Magistrate. It was adapted for radio by Archie Campbell and has Leslie French as Father Brown and William Rushton as G.K. Chesterton himself, who narrates the story. The Mirror of the Magistrate.
It would not be fair to record the adventures of Father Brown without some mention of the curious experience which he always referred to as the Mirror of the Magistrate. The case might equally well, and indeed more properly, have been called the Looking Glass of the Judge, but no doubt the alliteration of those capital M's appealed to my friend's liking for euphony, and so, in deference to him, I shall adhere to the title which he himself chose to bestow on it. As you shall hear, it was only by the merest chance that our little priest came to be involved in the strange circumstances at all, for the tale really begins when 2 old cronies, James Bagshaw and Wilfred Underhill, were taking their customary evening stroll through the leafy labyrinths of the large suburb in which they lived. Bagshaw was, by profession, a police detective, while his friend could best be described as an amateur interested in detection. They talked interminably as they walked. But contrary to general belief, it was, on the whole, the detective who did the talking and the amateur who listened.
Yes, ours is the only trade Underhill in which the professional is always supposed to be wrong. After all, people don't write stories in which hairdressers can't cut hair and have to be helped by a customer, or in which a cabman can't drive a cab until his fare explains to him the philosophy of cab driving.
No, I suppose not.
For all that, I'd never deny that we often tend to get into a rut, or, in other words, have the disadvantage of going by a rule. But where these writer chaps are wrong is that they don't allow us even the advantages of going by a rule.
Surely Sherlock Holmes, for example, would say that he went by a logical rule.
Well, you may be right, but I mean a collective rule. It's like the staff work of an army. We pool our information too.
And you don't think detective stories allow for that?
Well, let's take an imaginary case of Sherlock Holmes and Lestrade, the official detective. Sherlock Holmes, let us say, can guess that a total stranger crossing the street is a foreigner merely because he seems to look for the traffic to go to the right instead of the left. I'm quite sure Lestrade wouldn't guess anything of the kind. But what they leave out is the fact that the policeman who couldn't guess might probably know that the man was a foreigner merely because his department has to keep an eye on all foreigners. Some would say on all natives, too. And as our policeman, I'm glad the police know so much. And as a citizen, I sometimes wonder whether they don't know too much.
You don't seriously mean to say that you know anything about strange people in a strange street? That if a man walked out of that house over there, you'd know anything about him?
Oh, I should if he was the householder. That house is rented by a literary man of Anglo-Romanian extraction who generally lives in Paris, but is over here in connection with some poetical play of his. His name's Osric Orme, one of the new poets, and pretty steep to read, I believe.
But I mean, all the people down the road, behind these high blank walls and inside these houses, lost in large gardens. You can't know all of them.
Oh, I know a few. This garden wall here, for instance, that's at the end of the grounds of Sir Humphrey Gwynn, better known as Mr. Justice Gwynn.
Oh, you mean the old judge who made such a fuss about spying during the war?
Yes, that's the chap. The house next door belongs to a wealthy cigar merchant. He comes from Spanish America and looks Spanish enough himself, but he bears the very English name of Buller. The house beyond that... Did you hear that?
I certainly did.
And what's more, it came straight out of the back garden of Mr. Justice Gwynn, that paradise of peace and legality.
What do we do?
We'll find out what's happened, of course. There's no sign of a gate, so it's over the wall somehow. Go on. You'll have to give me a leg up, both. Now, get your hand under my foot. Right, like this. Yes, I think I can grab up. Right. Now, if I hang on to this branch, just a minute, I can... Can you grab hold of my hand? Yes. I think I can get you up. Right. 1, 2, 3. There. Right. Now, I suggest that we use the branch and swing over. Might help soften the fall. Right? Right. Right then. Quick. You all right?
Yes.
Along this path.
The garden seems to be illuminated. See those coloured lights in the trees? Is he having a party, do you think?
No. Lights are a hobby of his. He likes playing with a little electricity plant that he works in that summer house over there, where he does his work and keeps his papers. Buller, who knows him well, says the coloured lamps are more often a sign that he's not to be disturbed.
Sort of red danger signals, perhaps.
Good Lord. I'm afraid they are danger signals. Look over there, by that little pond, where the lights are clustered.
Great heavens, there's someone lying there. And his head's in the water.
Come on, across the lawn. This looks to me like... Here, wait a moment.
Where are you going? What's the matter?
Come on, got you.
Let go of me.
No, you don't. Now, come on, stop struggling if you don't want to get hurt. There, come on. There, that's better. Now, my friend, you had better explain yourself. What were you doing skulking in the bushes?
Nothing, I tell you. Let me go.
Not so fast. Come here. I want a better look at you under the light. Come along.
What on earth's going on?
Caught this man lurking in the bushes, trying to make his escape. I shouldn't wonder. Oh, lucky I spotted him in those laurels.
You've got it all wrong. I wasn't trying to escape. I was only...
Underhill, I wish you'd run on and see what's up by that pool.
Very well, if I must.
And now, my friend, who are you? What's your name?
Michael Flood. But I've got nothing to do with it. I found him lying dead and I was scared. But I only came to interview him from a paper.
Oh, a journalist, eh? When you interview celebrities for the press, do you generally climb over the wall?
How did you know that?
That trail of footprints in the dew, coming and going across the lawn towards the wall.
I couldn't make anybody hear at the front door. The servant had gone out.
Huh? How do you know he'd gone out?
I've just seen him drop back over the wall.
Where?
Over there. Just by the garden door.
You! Come here. I want to speak to you. You the servant here?
Yes, I am.
Very well. I'll have something to say to you later. Now, Mr. Flood, is there anybody who can testify to your identity?
I've just come from Ireland. The only man I know round here is a priest at St. Dominic's, Father
yes.
Brown.
He's a newcomer, too, is he not?
He's not been in the parish long.
Long enough to be able to vouch for you, I hope. Now, neither of you is to leave this place for the present, but you, my man, you can go into the house and ring up St. Dominic's. Ask Father Brown if he would mind coming here at once.
Very well. If I must.
No tricks, mind. As for you, Mr. Flood, I must ask you to remain with me until Father Brown turns up.
While our energetic detective was securing his potential fugitives, his companion had hastened to the pond. There a strange and tragic sight met his eyes. The dead man, there was no doubt he was dead, lay with his head in the pond, his black, spidery legs sprawling at angles up the steep bank from which he had fallen. In the glow of the artificial illumination, his face looked gaunt and rather sinister, its bald dome crowned with scanty grey locks. He was in evening dress, and despite the damage done by the bullet wound in the temple, Underhill had no difficulty in recognizing the features he had seen in many portraits of Sir Humphrey Gwynne. Blood was slowly eddying from the head wound into the luminous water in snaky rings, like the transparent crimson of sunset clouds. Underhill did not know how long he stood staring down at this macabre figure. But when he looked up, he saw a group of 4 people standing above him on the bank. Bagshaw and his Irish captive he was prepared for, and the third, judging by his striped red waistcoat, was clearly a servant of some kind. It was the 4th person, a stumpy little man with a round face and a hat like a black halo whose presence puzzled him. Then he heard Bagshaw say,
I'm glad you are able to identify this man, Father Brown, but you must realize he's still under suspicion. Of course, he may be innocent, but he did enter the garden in an irregular fashion.
I think he's innocent myself, but of course I may be wrong.
Why do you think he's innocent?
Because he entered the garden in an irregular fashion, while I entered in a regular fashion. But I seem to be almost the only person here who did.
What do you mean by a regular fashion?
Well, I came in by the front door.
Does it matter very much how you came in, unless you propose to confess to the murder?
Yes, I think it does. When I came in at the front door, I saw something in the passage I don't think any of the rest of you have seen.
What was that?
A sort of general smash-up. A big looking-glass broken, a small palm tree knocked over, and the pot lying in pieces on the floor.
Right, then, let's go into the house. You, my man, show us the way.
Very good, sir.
Father Brown, Mr. Flood, be so good as to follow him.
Certainly.
Underhill. Underhill. A word with you. Yes? What is it? Something odd about that servant. Tells me his name is Green, though he looks like some kind of foreigner. However, there seems no doubt that he really is Gwynne's servant. The only one, apparently. The queer thing is that he flatly denies that his master was in the garden at all, dead or alive.
Does he, by Jove?
Yes, he said the old judge had gone out to a grand legal dinner and he didn't expect to be home for hours. That was his excuse for slipping out.
Did he give any excuse for his curious way of slipping in?
None that I could make sense of, but he seems to be scared of something.
This way, gentlemen, if you please. This is the front entrance hall, sir.
Not much light, is there? Can't you turn that lamp up higher?
I'll do my best, sir.
Yes, that's better. Yes, I see what you mean, Father Brown. There are smashed to smithereens, plant overturned and broken, debris everywhere. Yes, you're quite right. There's been a struggle here, and it must have been a struggle between Gwynne and his murderer.
It did seem to me that something had happened here.
Yes, and it's pretty clear what. The murderer entered by the front door and found Gwynne. Oh, probably Gwynne let him in. There was a deadly grapple, possibly a chance shot that hit the glass. Gwyn fled into the garden where he was pursued and shot finally down by the pond.
That seems a reasonable theory.
I fancy that's the whole story of the crime itself. But of course, I must take a look round the other rooms before reaching a final conclusion. Remarkably little to help us in any of the rooms so far. Things seem pretty shipshape on the whole. Oh, this is the library, I suppose.
Yes, splendid, splendid.
Well, papers in order. Correspondence undisturbed. No sign of anybody. What have we here? An automatic pistol.
Oh, really?
And loaded, too. Not exactly what one would expect to find in a judge's library desk.
Perhaps he was expecting something. Or somebody.
Possibly. It seems queer he didn't take this with him when he went out into the hall. Well, as there's nothing else to be seen here, we'd better take another look at the scene of the struggle.
As they returned to the hall, making their way towards the front door, Father Brown let his eye roam around in a rather absent-minded fashion. The grey and faded pattern of the wallpaper seemed to emphasize the dust and dingy floridity of the few early Victorian ornaments, the green rust that devoured the bronze of the single lamp, and the dull gold that glimmered in the frame of the broken mirror.
You know, Inspector Bagshaw, they say it's bad luck to break a looking glass. This looks like the very house of ill luck. There's something about the very furniture, the very atmosphere, the whole place.
It's rather odd. I thought the front door would be shut, but it's left on the latch.
Really? That's odd.
Oh, well, at least we can take a look at the front garden. Yes. Flower beds laid out neatly, either side of the drive. Roses, too, I see. Rather more conventional than the rest of the garden.
Yes, indeed. That fine yew hedge running down to the gate adds to the impression of formality, does it not? Curious the way it's been clipped.
How do you mean?
That sort of turret effect along the top and that odd hole that's been cut into the side, like some great green cavern.
Oh, intended to accommodate a garden bench, most likely.
So I should imagine. Why, bless my soul, it's the entrance to some kind of inner sanctum.
Hey, where are you off to, Father Brown? What's going on? Is there someone there?
There most certainly is. Inspector Bagshaw, this is none other than Mr. Orme, the celebrated poet, I understand.
I must trouble him to answer a few questions and to explain what the devil he's doing here.
Mr. Osric Orme, the poet, was not a model of self-expression when it came to the answering of questions. The little he said was obscure, either because he really knew hardly any English, or because he knew better than to know any. Apart from the fact that he was a very small man, his only outstanding feature was a shock of fair hair, yellow and radiant as the head of a huge dandelion. Bagshaw's inquiries elicited little more from him than that the poet had intended to call on Sir Humphrey Gwyn, but had not done so because he could not get anyone to answer the bell.
Now, do you mean to tell me that you did not observe that the door was partly open?
Yes, sir, I do.
And you did not succeed in seeing Sir Humphrey?
No.
In any case, the hour was somewhat late for paying a social visit, was it not?
Possibly.
Why, then, did you remain in the garden? Very well. If you refuse to answer my questions, Mr. Orme, there is nothing more to be done for the present. I must ask you to accompany my friends and me as far as your residence. As for you, Mr. Flood, I won't detain you any longer, but I must warn you that I shall be making further inquiries in the morning. Now, gentlemen, let us be on our way.
Good evening, Inspector.
Well, I'm jiggered. Mr. Buller, is it not? Couldn't recognize you for a moment, sir. May I ask what you're doing here, standing under a lamppost?
Taking a last puff at a cigar before turning in, that's all, Inspector. Hello, Orme. Here we are again, eh? Had a long talk with old Gwyn, I suppose?
Sir Humphrey Gwyn is dead, Mr. Buller.
Dead?
Yes, that's what I said. I'm investigating the case, and I must ask you what you meant just now.
I only meant that when I passed 2 hours ago, Mr. Orme was going in at this gate to see Sir Humphrey.
He says he hasn't seen him yet or even been inside the house.
It's a long time to stand on the doorstep.
Yes, and it's rather a long time to stand in the street.
I've been home since then, been writing letters, and came out again to post them.
Well, you'll have to tell all that later and in a different place, I've no doubt. Good night to you, Mr. Buller, or perhaps it would be more accurate to bid you good morning.
The trial of Osric Orme for the murder of Sir Humphrey Gwyn, which filled the newspapers for so many weeks, really turned entirely on that little talk under the lamppost, when the grey dawn was breaking about the dark streets and gardens. Everything came back to the enigma of those 2 hours when Buller saw Orme going in at the garden gate, and the time when Father Brown found him still lurking in the hole behind the yew hedge. He certainly had time to commit murder, had he wished, and it was also argued by the prosecution that he also had the opportunity, since both the front and side doors were unlatched. The court followed with interest Bagshaw's reconstruction of the struggle in the passage, of which the traces were so evident. Indeed, the police had since found the shot that had shattered the glass. Finally, in the view of the prosecution, that hole in the hedge had very much the appearance of a hiding place.
Father Brown, you say that this hole in the hedge led to some kind of inner chamber?
That is so.
Was there any other means of exit to this rustic armor?
No, it was a cul-de-sac. There was no way out.
And since this place gave no access elsewhere, it was unlikely to be disturbed by the casual passerby?
That is so.
In short, it would provide a convenient retreat for someone who wished to conceal his presence.
I suppose it would. Yes.
Thank you, Father Brown. I am much obliged to you.
But in his final pleading, Sir Matthew Blake, counsel for the defence, skillfully turned this point to his client's advantage.
I ask you, members of the jury, why any man, particularly a guilty one, should entrap himself in a place without possible exit, when it would obviously be more sensible to slip out into the street? Again, and this is the final point for your consideration, what possible motive could prompt this man, a poet of international fame and only a rare visitor to this country, to commit such a foul and heinous crime? What possible reason could such a man have for doing to death one of the most eminent and honoured luminaries in the whole of our legal profession?
In the witness box, Orme could give no coherent account of what he was doing that night, and was as uncommunicative to his own counsel as he was to the prosecution. Sir Arthur Travers, the distinguished prosecuting counsel, made all possible capital out of his silence. A long, gaunt man with a cadaverous face, he might, thought Father Brown, be compared to some crane or stork as he leant forward, prodding the poet with questions. His long nose might have been a beak.
Mr. Orme, do you mean to tell the jury that you never went in to see the deceased gentleman at all?
No.
You wanted to see him, I suppose? You must have been very anxious to see him. Didn't you wait 2 hours in front of his front door?
Yes.
And yet you never noticed that the door was open?
No.
What in the world were you doing for 2 hours in somebody else's front garden? You were doing something, I suppose?
Yes.
Is it a secret?
It's a secret from you.
Silence! Gentlemen of the jury, we do not know the exact reason why this honourable public servant was murdered. We shall not know the reason when the next public servant is murdered. If my learned friend on the other side should himself fall victim to his eminence and incur the hatred which the hellish powers of destruction feel for the guardians of the law, he will be murdered, and he will not know the reason. He too will have perished in the octopus coil of this foul and far-flung conspiracy. For conspiracy it is, without a doubt. Make no mistake about that. The conspiracy as alien to our British way of life and thinking as are the evil and faceless criminals who hide behind it. If the forces of anarchy prevail, half the decent people in this court will be butchered in their beds, and we shall never know the reason. And we shall never know the reason and never arrest the massacre as long as the defense is permitted to stop all proceedings with the stale tag about motive, when every fact in the case, every glaring incongruity, every gaping silence tells us that we stand in the presence of Cain. Gentlemen of the jury, this callous, this inhuman wretch stands arraigned before you. I ask you, as responsible and law-abiding citizens, to arrive at the only possible verdict and to find him guilty.
Well, I wonder how long the jury will be making up its mind.
Oh, not long, I fancy. The case seems pretty well tied up. I must say I never heard Sir Arthur getting so excited. Some people are saying that he went beyond the usual limit, and that the prosecution in a murder case oughtn't to be so vindictive.
I agree, Bagshaw.
All the same, I'll not deny that there was something downright creepy about that little goblin with the yellow hair. I felt at times there was a monster in the dock. If that was due to Sir Arthur's eloquence, then he certainly took a heavy responsibility in putting so much passion into it.
He was a friend of poor Gwyn's, of course. I dare say that's why he feels so strongly in this case. I suppose it's doubtful whether a man ought to act in such a case on mere personal feeling.
Oh, you're wrong, Underhill. Sir Arthur Travers wouldn't act on feeling, however strong it was. He's got a very stiff sense of his professional position. He's one of those men who are ambitious even when they've satisfied their ambition. I know nobody who'd take more trouble to keep his position in the world. No, if he lets himself go like that, he must have some very good reason for wanting to convict Orme, and some very good reason for thinking he can do it. That means that the facts will support him. No, his confidence doesn't look well for the prisoner.
No, indeed.
Well, Father Brown, what do you think of our judicial procedure?
Well, I think the thing that struck me most was how different men look in their wigs. You talk about Sir Arthur being so tremendous, but I happened to see him take off his wig for a moment, and he really looks quite a different man. He's quite bald, for one thing.
You wouldn't propose to found the defense on the fact that the prosecuting counsel is bald, would you?
Not exactly. To tell you the truth, I was thinking how little some kinds of people know about other kinds of people.
Oh? And where does that get us?
Well, suppose I went among some remote people who'd never heard of England. Suppose I told them that there's a man in my country who won't ask a question of life and death until he's put a creation made of horsehair on top of his head, with little tails behind and grey corkscrew curls at the side. They would think he was rather eccentric. And they would think so because they don't know anything about English barristers, because they don't know what a barrister is.
Well, I'll grant you that, but I don't see how...
Well, that barrister doesn't know what a poet is. He doesn't understand that a poet's eccentricities wouldn't seem eccentric to other poets. He thinks it odd that Orme should walk about in a beautiful garden for 2 hours with nothing to do. God bless my soul. A poet would think nothing of walking about in the same backyard for 10 hours if he had a poem to do. Orme's counsel was just as stupid. It had never occurred to him to ask Orme the obvious question.
What question do you mean?
Why, what poem he was making up, of course. what line he was stuck at, what epithet he was looking for, what climax he was trying to work up to. If there were any educated people in court who know what literature is, they would have known well enough if he had anything genuine to do. You would have asked a manufacturer about the conditions of his factory, but nobody seems to consider the conditions under which poetry is manufactured.
That's all very well. But why did he hide? Why did he go into that hole behind the hedge and stop there? It led nowhere.
Right.
Why, because it led nowhere, of course. Anybody who clapped eyes on that blind alley ending in nothing might have known that an artist would want to go there, just as a child would.
To go there for what?
I beg your pardon, but it seems odd that none of you understand these things. Don't you know that an artist must have time in which to think, to ponder, to absorb his impressions, and then find the means by which to express them? If you told him that hole in the hedge led nowhere except to that small green cavern in which I found him, he would tell you that it led to the country at the end of the world, a country which no one else beside himself could ever hope to enter. But do you expect him to tell you that in the witness box? What would you say to him if he did? You talk about a man having a jury of his peers. Why don't you have a jury of poets?
Word. You talk as if you were a poet yourself.
You thank your stars I'm not. Thank your lucky stars a priest has to be more charitable than a poet. Lord have mercy on us. If you knew what a crushing, what a cruel contempt he feels for the lot of you, you'd feel as if you were under Niagara.
You may know more than I do about the artistic temperament, Father Brown, but after all, the answer is simple. You can only show that he might have acted as he did without committing the crime. But it's equally true that he might have committed the crime. And who else could have committed it?
Have you thought about the servant, Green? He told rather a queer story.
Oh, you think Green did it after all?
Oh, I'm quite sure he didn't. I only asked if you thought about his queer story. He only went out for a drink or an assignation or whatnot, but he went out by the garden door and came back over the garden wall. In other words, he left the door open, but he came back to find it shut. Why? Because somebody else had already passed that way.
The murderer. Do you know who he was?
I know what he looked like.
You do?
Yes, but that's the only thing I do know. I can almost see him as he came in at the front door, in the gleam of the hall lamp. His figure, his clothes, even his face.
What is all this? How did he look?
He looked like Sir Humphrey Gwynn.
What the devil do you mean? Gwynn was lying dead with his head in the pond.
Oh, yes.
Well?
Let's go back to that theory of yours for a moment, Inspector. It was a very good one, though I don't quite agree with it.
Oh, and why is that?
Well, you see, you suppose the murderer came in at the front door, met the judge in the hall, struggled with him, breaking the mirror in the process. You further suppose that the judge then retreated into the garden where he was finally shot beside the pond. Am I correct?
More or less, yes.
Well, somehow it doesn't sound natural to me. Granted, he retreated down the hall. There are two exits at the end, one into the garden and one into the house. Now, surely he would be more likely to retreat into the house.
Why?
But his gun was there. His telephone was there. His servant, so far as he knew, was there. Even his nearest neighbors were on that side of the house. Now, why should he stop to open the garden door and go out alone on the deserted side of the house?
There's something in that, certainly.
Yes, but we know he did go out of the house. We know he went out of the house because he was found in the garden.
He never went out of the house because he was never in the house.
What?
Well, not that evening, I mean. He was sitting in that summer house. Yes, I read that lesson in the dark at the beginning, in red and golden stars across the garden.
The lights?
Yes, the lights. You told me, Inspector, that they were worked from the summer house, did you not?
I did.
Well, they wouldn't have been burning at all if Gwyn hadn't been in the summer house. No, he was there all right. And he was trying to run across to the house and telephone for help when the murderer shot him beside the pond.
Yes, but what about the pot and the palm and then the broken mirror? It was you who found them, Father Brown. It was you yourself who said that there must have been a struggle in the hall.
Did I? Oh, surely I didn't say that.
Oh, yes, you did. You heard him too, didn't you, Underhill?
I certainly understood him to say something to that
Well,
effect.
I never thought that. What I think I said was that something had happened in the hall. And something did happen, but it wasn't a struggle.
And what broke the mirror?
A bullet broke the mirror. A bullet fired by the criminal.
And the broken palm pot? How do you account for that?
The fragments of falling glass were quite big enough to knock over the pot and the palm.
Yes, I'll grant that, but what else could he be firing at except Gwyn?
That's rather a fine metaphysical point. In one sense, of course, he was firing at Gwyn. But Gwyn wasn't there to be fired at.
Wasn't there? What on earth do you mean?
I mean that the murderer was alone in the hall.
Alone?
Yes, alone. Now, imagine both of you the looking glass at the end of the passage, before it was broken, of course, and with the tall palm arching over it. In the half-light reflecting those dark monochrome walls, it would look like the end of the passage, would it not?
Yes, I suppose it might.
And a man reflected in it would look like a man coming from inside the house, if only that reflection were a little like him. The murderer, standing by the front door, would think
Stop
that...
a minute. I believe I begin to...
Yes, you begin to see why all the suspects in this case must be innocent. Not one of them could possibly have mistaken his own reflection for Mr. Justice Gwyn. Orme, the man now on trial for his life in that courtroom. Orme would have known at once that his shock of yellow hair was not a bald head. Flood, whose hair, you'll recollect, was a flaming red, would have seen that same red hair in the mirror. And Green, with his red-striped servant's waistcoat, would have recognized himself at once. Besides, all three men were short and shabby. None of them could have thought that their own image was a tall, thin old gentleman with a bald head and wearing evening dress. No, we want another, equally tall and thin to match him. That's what I meant by saying that I knew what the murderer looked like.
And what do you mean by that?
I am going to argue the very thing which you said was so ludicrous and impossible.
What do you mean?
I am going to base the defense on the fact that the prosecuting counsel had a bald head.
Oh, my God.
You've been following the movements of a good many people in this business. You policemen were prodigiously interested in the movements of the poet and the servant and the Irishman. The man whose movements seem to have been rather forgotten is the dead man himself.
How so?
His servant was quite honestly astonished at finding his master had returned home. His master had gone to a great dinner of all the leaders of the legal profession, but had left it abruptly and come home. Why? He was not ill, for he summoned no assistance. No, he had almost certainly quarreled with one of his fellow guests, with some leader of the legal profession. It's among the leaders of that profession that we should have looked first for his enemy.
Yes, I take your point, Father Brown.
Sir Humphrey returned home and shut himself up in the summer house, where he kept all his private documents and notes about unethical, dubious, possibly even treasonable practices among certain of his colleagues. But the leader of the legal profession, who knew there was something against him in those documents, was thoughtful enough to follow his accuser home, he also being in evening dress, but with a pistol in his pocket. That is all. And nobody could ever have guessed except for the mirror. A queer thing is a mirror, you know. A picture frame that holds hundreds of different pictures, all vivid and vanish forever. Yet there was something specially strange about the glass that hung at the end of that grey corridor under that green palm. It is as if it were a magic glass and had a different fate from others, as if its picture could somehow survive it, hanging in the air of that twilight house like a spectre, or at least like an abstract diagram, the skeleton of an argument. We could at least conjure out of the void the thing that Sir Arthur Travers saw. By the way, Inspector, there was one very true thing that you said about him.
I'm glad to hear it. What was it?
You said that Sir Arthur must have some good reason for wanting to get Orme hanged.
Well,
About time to go back into court, gentlemen. I understand the jury will be returning in a matter of minutes.
Usher, I must see counsel for the defence at once.
See Sir Matthew Blake, Inspector? That'd be most irregular at this stage of the proceedings.
It's absolutely imperative that I speak with Sir Matthew before the jury is called back. There's not a moment to lose. It's a matter of life and death.
In that case, you'd better come this way, sir. I'll see what can be done.
Special, late night special, on case sensation, judge stops trial, famous lawyer withdraws some case, special, murder trial sensation, special, late night, special.
Here, boy, give me a paper.
Right you are, Governor.
Here's your penny.
So, special, late night special, murder trial sensation.
Hey, Oliver, listen to this. Following the judge's unprecedented intervention in the trial of Osric Orme, it is understood that Sir Arthur Travers, the distinguished prosecuting counsel, has torn up his brief and has disassociated himself from any further proceedings.
Phew. Well, I'm jiggered. Never knew that old windbag to chuck his hand in. What's up with him, do you suppose?
Rumour and wild conjecture flew everywhere, from the most exclusive of London clubs to the humblest of public houses in some dockland back street. The subject was on the tip of every tongue. What, people were asking, could have been the extraordinary circumstances which caused a learned judge to stop the trial of Osric Orme? What new and vital evidence could have reached his lordship's ears at so late a stage? Had he perhaps decided that the man in the dock was unfit to plead? Had someone borne false witness? Or could it have been that for once the prosecution had overreached itself, and that Sir Arthur Travers' impassioned denunciation was held to have so prejudiced the minds of the jury as to inhibit its members from reaching a proper verdict, and so procure a grave miscarriage of justice? Father Brown, immersed once more in his pastoral duties, and secure in his belief that an innocent man had been saved from the gallows, gave little thought to all this wild speculation. And it was not until several days later that he had an opportunity of meeting Inspector Bagshaw again. Then a sudden call to the sickbed of a distant parishioner took him fortuitously past the portals of the local police headquarters. On an impulse, he stopped and went inside.
Ah, Father Brown. Nice to see you. Come on in and sit down.
I thought I'd just drop in. I understand that the authorities have been moving pretty quickly on the new lines of inquiry.
Yes, that is so. But haven't you heard the news?
You mean the retirement from the scene of Sir Arthur Travers?
Sir Arthur Travers is dead.
Dead? You mean that he...
Yes. Last night he shot at the same man again.
But this time, not in a mirror.
That was The Mirror of the Magistrate by G.K. Chesterton, adapted by Archie Campbell. You heard Leslie French as Father Brown, William Rushton as G.K. Chesterton, who narrated the story, and Alan Rowe as Detective Inspector Bagshaw. Underhill was played by David Sinclair, Michael Flood by John Livesey, Osric Orme by Jonathan Byrne, Green by Sam Dastor, Buller by Timothy Bateson, Sir Michael Blake by Nigel Lambert, Sir Arthur Travers by Godfrey Kenton, and The Newsboy by Mark Burton.
With The Perishing of the Pendragons. The story has been adapted by Archie Campbell and has Leslie French as Father Brown and William Rushton as G.K. Chesterton himself, who narrates the stories. The Perishing of the Pendragons.
Keep her steady now. Steady, she is. Half a point to starboard. Half a point to day. That's the ticket. Hold her head to the wind. Aye, aye, sir.
How's our reverend friend faring, Flambeau?
Not too well, I fear. It would seem he has just suffered another attack of mal de mer. This swell is rather more than he can stomach.
Poor fellow. Wretched thing, seasickness. But never mind, we'll be in calmer waters before long.
No one will be better pleased than he.
Father Brown was by nature no very happy sailor. Nor at the time of which I am speaking was he in any mood for adventure. It will, therefore, strike my listeners as surprising that we should discover our little priest at sea, aboard a yacht, pitching and tossing in heavy seas as she heads towards the rocky and dangerous coast of Cornwall. Stranger, too, that we should find him in the company of no less a person than his old adversary, the international arch-criminal Flambeau. A word of explanation is therefore necessary to acquaint you with the situation. First, dear listener, you must know that following his conversion by Father Brown after their last encounter, Flambeau had renounced his evil ways for good, and obeying the old adage, set a thief to catch a thief, had established himself in London as a most successful and very private detective. Since then, the two men had become firm friends. As for Father Brown, he had lately fallen ill with overwork, and when he began to recover, Flambeau had taken him on a cruise in a small yacht belonging to Sir Cecil Fanshawe, a young Cornish squire with a particular enthusiasm for the coast of his native county.
Have you ever seen anything like it, Flambeau? That ragged violet sunset against those ragged volcanic crags. If only one had the skill to paint it.
It would certainly inspire an artist. Look, Fanshawe, that rock that stands out so prominently. It's shaped exactly like a dragon, I declare.
You're right, it does resemble one, hence the name.
Name? What name?
Pendragon. This part of the countryside from which the Pendragons derive their patronymic. But observe that rock nearby. Does it not look like Merlin, that old magician of Tintagel?
Yes, by Jove, so it does. Extraordinary. There you are, Brown, old friend. You feeling better?
Oh, somewhat better, thank you.
You'll be right as rain, Father Brown, once we reach the shelter of the estuary.
Our host has been pointing out some of the interesting landmarks. Those rocks on either side of the river's mouth, for instance. Would you not say they might be the gate of fairyland, each with its twinkling lights?
Yes, I suppose they might.
Pilot, what's that ancient rhyme of yours about those old rocks?
Read they old lights, Sir Cecil?
Yes.
Both eyes bright, see more right. One eye winks, down her sinks.
Which, being interpreted, means that when you see these two coastlights exactly side by side, you are on the right channel. But if one is hidden behind the other, you are heading for the rocks. Thank you, pilot.
You're welcome, sir.
The West Country's full of such quaint fables, but when it comes to seamanship, I'd pit the men of Cornwall against those of Devon any day.
There speaks a true Cornishman.
Maybe so, but I'll take my oath there have been captains among these coves and islets compared with whom Drake was practically a landsman.
So it's possible that Kingsley's adventurous title Westward Ho only meant that all Devonshire men wished they were living in Cornwall.
I don't know about that. But near this very spot, there's an old retired admiral who discovered the last group of Pacific islands to be charted. Amongst other things.
It would be interesting to meet an old sea dog like that.
We most probably shall if he happens to be at home.
Do you hear that, old friend? Another colourful character to add to your unique collection.
No doubt, no doubt.
Oh, cheer up, Father Brown. We're nearly home and dry. Watch those two lights. They're exactly port and starboard of us now. That means we're almost through the river mouth.
Oh, I'm delighted to hear it.
All these trivialities Father Brown heard and saw. But as a tired man hears a tune in the railway wheels, or a sick man sees the pattern of his wallpaper. However, as the estuary grew narrower the water calmer and the air warmer, he began to wake up and take notice. His slowly reviving senses were encouraged by the magic clearness and intensity of the colours he saw all around him.
What a perfect evening. It's as if a smoked glass slide had been slid from the face of nature, revealing her in her true colours.
I can assure you, Father Brown, that such evenings are by no means uncommon in these parts, particularly after a wet day. Just look at those shallows, peat-stained from the rain. Don't they glow like amber in the setting sun?
Yes, indeed. And those trees on either side of us, like tumbled masses of some vivid violet flowers stirred by the breeze.
A prospect to sing about, in fact, at least for poets such as yourself.
I make no claim to poetry, but even a confirmed pragmatist like you, Flambeau, must surely find beauty in such a scene.
I can imagine none lovelier, or, for that matter, more peaceful.
How far inland may we travel, Sir Cecil?
Oh, for several miles. Even at low water, the channel is deep and wide enough for a boat as small as ours. However, the river itself narrows with every turn.
I see no signs of human life. We might as well be exploring some uninhabited Pacific island.
One belonging to the old admiral, perhaps, eh? Where are your eyes, man? Haven't you observed those people moving along the bank?
Where?
Over there to starboard. Several of them.
Oh, so there are, to be sure. What do you make of them?
Oh, gypsies, probably. Carrying faggots and osiers they've cut in the forest. Not an unusual sight hereabouts. Most likely live in camp nearby.
Picturesque enough. Now I see them more clearly.
Oh, ho, what have we here? Something that is uncommon in these remote parts. A young woman, dark-haired, bare-headed, paddling a canoe. I dare say Father Brown's rather better acquainted with such emancipated activities and those Essex waterways of his, eh, Padre?
Oh, such sights are no longer unconventional, I must admit.
What's she up to, I wonder? Disappeared under the trees now. Pity. Perhaps we shall catch up with her on the next bend.
But all thoughts of the gypsies or the young woman in the canoe were forgotten when the next turn in the river brought in sight a singular object. The water ahead of them seemed to be split and cloven by the dark wedge of a narrow and wooded islet. At the rate they were going, the islet appeared to swim towards them like a ship with a very high prow, or to speak more correctly, a very high funnel.
What on earth is this?
Bless my soul, what an extraordinary edifice. Well, it's too high for its breadth to be called a house, or indeed anything but a tower, yet it appears to be built entirely of wood.
And in the most eccentric manner, too. Some of the planks and beams are obviously of good seasoned oak, while others seem to be of raw and quite recent pine wood. Some of them look to have been blacked over with tar or pitch to match the oak.
And observe how those same black beams are set crooked and crisscross, at all kinds of angles. Oh, a regular patchwork of black and white.
Intended for habitation, nevertheless, I'd say. Otherwise, why these elaborate slitted windows?
The entire effect is somewhat incongruous, I admit, both in shape and material.
Incongruous, certainly. Almost as surprising as if one were to see a top hat made out of tin, or a frock coat out of tartan. But here perhaps we have the explanation. That building just visible over the treetops. That's as pleasing an example of Tudor domestic architecture as one could wish for. Black and white, too, but with none of that piebald look of that tower. Although no doubt there is some connection between the two.
Possibly, but what can be its purpose? Some kind of watchtower, would you say?
Aha, my friend. You've not seen a place quite like this before, I fancy. Now you shall see whether I exaggerate about the mariners of Cornwall.
How do you mean?
This place belongs to old Admiral Pendragon. The spirit of Raleigh and Hawkins is a memory for the Devon folk. It's a modern fact with the Pendragons. I think if good Queen Bess rose from her grave and came up this river in a golden barge, she would be received by the Admiral in a house exactly as she was accustomed to. She would find an English captain still talking of fresh lands to be found in little ships, as much as if she'd dined with Drake.
She'd find a rum sort of thing in the garden which would hardly please her Renaissance eye.
Oh, why?
Well, that Elizabethan architecture is charming in its homely way, but it's against its very nature to break out into towers and turrets.
And yet that tower is the most romantic and Elizabethan part of the business. The story goes that it was built by the lady of Sir Peter Pendragon in the days of the Spanish Wars. They say she erected it here because from the top you can see the corner where vessels turn into the river mouth. She wished to be the first to see her husband's ship as he sailed home from the Spanish Main.
Such is true love.
And the tower has remained here ever since?
Yes. And though it needed patching and even rebuilding for other reasons, it has always been rebuilt in the old way.
For what other reasons has it been rebuilt?
Oh, there's a strange tale about that, too. Yes, the story has it that Sir Peter, who had some of the faults of the pirate as well as the virtues of the sailor, was bringing home 3 Spanish gentlemen in honourable captivity, intending to escort them, 3 were brothers, it seems, to the court of Elizabeth.
Men did not always treat their prisoners so gently.
Noblesse oblige, my friend, as always.
Nevertheless, Sir Peter, it appears, was a man of ungovernable temper, and coming to high words with one of them, he caught him by the throat and flung him into the sea. Whether it was by accident or design, I don't know, but a second Spaniard instantly drew his sword and flew at Pendragon. After a short but furious combat, during which both were wounded, Sir Peter drove his blade through the other's body. As it happened, the ship had already turned into the river mouth and was in comparatively shallow water.
Oh, much as we are in now.
Exactly. This might be the very place. Anyhow, at this point, the third brother sprang over the side of the ship and struck for shore. When he had almost reached it, he turned towards the ship, and standing up to his waist in the water, holding up both arms to heaven, he cried out to Pendragon that he at least was yet alive, that he would go on living, and that generation after generation of Pendragons should never see him or his, but should know by very certain signs, and here he pointed at the tower, that he and his vengeance were alive. With that, he dived under the water and was never seen again.
A strange story indeed.
Look, there's that girl again. The dark-haired beauty in the canoe. She seems just as bothered by that queer tower as we were.
Flambeau, there are plenty of girls in the world, but not many things like the Pendragon Tower. As you may suppose, plenty of superstitions and guesswork have followed the track of the Spaniard's curse, but it is perfectly true that this tower has been burnt down 2 or 3 times. 2 at least of the Admiral's near kin have perished by shipwreck, and one of them, to my own knowledge, on practically the same spot where Sir Peter threw the Spaniard overboard.
And that spot might be just here.
It's possible, yes.
What a pity. She's going.
Who's going?
The girl in the canoe. She's not even spared us a glance.
Flambeau, old fellow, you're incorrigible.
When did your friend, the Admiral, tell you this family history, Sir Cecil?
Oh, many years ago. He hasn't been to sea for some time now, though he's as keen on it as ever. I believe there's a family compact or something. Well, here's the landing stage. Let's step ashore and see the old boy. Here. Oh, well, take my hand, Father Brown.
To help
Come
me.
on.
There
we are.
Thank you.
Ooh. I must warn you both not to be surprised at what you may find. The Admiral is an eccentric old chap, and his house and household are even stranger.
Oh, he has a family, then?
No, he's a bachelor and lives alone, except for a butler and a couple of Negro manservants. But I was thinking really of his appearance. In his blue reefer jacket, white duck trousers, and the broad-brimmed black hat he habitually wears, you would say he'd stepped straight off one of Nelson's men of war.
Oh, well, I look forward to meeting this interesting personage.
He'll find much else besides the Admiral to interest you at Pendragon, I'll warrant. The house and gardens are out of sight beyond the trees. As you see, the tower forms a kind of gatehouse to the main drive.
A splendid approach to a gentleman's estate.
But a somewhat forbidding one in this fading light.
Oh, no, Flambeau, I don't agree. Mystical, perhaps, but not forbidding. One could imagine all manner of strange, unearthly beings dwelling in the dark recesses of these woods.
You're right, Brown. King Arthur was here, they say, and Merlin, and the fairies before him. Cornwall is a land of strange legends.
What's that?
A gardener trimming a hedge, I should think. Certainly not one of Father Brown's ghosts, but we'll soon find out.
Ah, death and damnation. The confounded blade got stuck again. Oh, what the devil's the matter with the blasted thing? Holy Moses, will you never come free, you perishing son of Satan?
It's the Admiral himself, no less.
Oh, hell bells! What in the name of... Ah, at last.
My dear Admiral, do you generally cut out a new front door whenever you want to go for a walk?
No, but I've really got to cut down this ruddy hedge. It's spoiling all my plants. No one else here can do it properly. I'll only carve another bit off the front door, as you call it, and then come out and welcome you. Capital. Well, that's done the trick. There's nothing like an old cutlass when it comes to chopping things down. Glad to see you, Cecil, my dear boy.
How do you do, sir?
Who are your friends?
2 guests from my yacht. This is Father Brown, who's taking a short rest from his parish.
Delighted to make your acquaintance, sir.
And this is my old friend, Aristide Flambeau. You've heard me speak of him, I'm sure.
Welcome to Pendragon, Mr. Flambeau.
I've been telling them something about the place, and now they're hoping to see more of it for themselves.
Oh, so you shall, gentlemen. As soon as I finish with this damn fence.
You seem to have set yourself quite a task here, Admiral. You're experiencing some difficulty just now, from what one could hear.
Letting myself go, was I? Yes, well, you must forgive an old sailor. Yes, you know, I do go on a bit. I really find a kind of enjoyment in smashing things these days.
So it would appear, sir.
So would you, my boy. If your only real pleasure lay in cruising about the South Seas in search of new cannibal islands, and instead you had to stick on this muddy little rockery in a sort of rustic pond.
I'd hardly describe Pendragon as a rockery, sir.
Perhaps not. When I think how I've cut down a mile or more of poisonous jungle with an old cutlass half as sharp as this, and then remember I must stop here and chop this matchwood just because of some confounded old bargain scribbled on a family Bible, I feel like that. All right, now let's go up to the house. You must have some dinner. It's getting too dark to take in much of the garden, but you may notice the tulips. Yes, we've had an exceptionally fine show of them this spring.
Yes, so I observe. Yellow and red, massed in separate beds. Most effective. Is there any special significance in the choice of colors?
No? Why?
Well, red and yellow, the colors of Spain.
Spain? What's that to do with it?
Oh, nothing, Admiral, nothing. I was merely indulging in a passing fancy.
You know, if you're interested in flowers, you should be here in June when the azaleas are in bloom. Oh, they make a rare spectacle.
Oh, so they should in such a setting.
Unfortunately, that gardener of mine is more interested in the cultivation of his roses, and for some reason they never do so well here. Hey, Tremaine!
What?
You can hang up that coil of hose now. You've done quite enough watering for today.
Oh, just as you wish, Admiral. But then still that thirsty.
Yeah, never mind. You do as I say. Oh, he's rough and ready, that fellow Tremaine, but loyal as they make 'em. You'll observe, Mr. Flambeau, how the trees break here to provide a view of the river from the house.
Yes. And I notice you have mounted a telescope in a strategic position to take advantage of it.
Well, old habits die hard, you know. Must have a stretch of water to scan, even if it's only an old, muddy estuary. Be careful of these steps.
Bless my soul, what's this?
What's what, Father Brown?
Well, this oak beam above the doorway. It appears to have some interesting carvings on it.
Oh. What do you make of them?
Well, it's difficult to tell from the ground. Might I make use of this garden table to get somewhat nearer?
Yes.
That's it. Ah, that's better.
Father Brown is an expert in antiquities, sir.
Indeed. Well, what can you tell us now?
Well, the carving is much worn away in places, but as far as I can see, It appears to be divided into 3 separate representations.
Yes? Well, go on, describe them to us.
The first shows the outlines of a tall, narrow building. A tower, possibly. It's crowned by what looks like a... Ah, yes, curly, pointed ribbons.
And the next carving?
Ah, now this one's much clearer. It represents a ship, an Elizabethan galley. Yes, I would say it's an Elizabethan galley riding on a line of decorative waves. There's a kind of jagged cleft in the vessel's side. Oh, yes, here's what appears to be a rock jutting up from the water.
What do you make of the third panel?
Well, now, this appears to depict the upper half of a human figure, both arms held stiffly aloft, emerging from the same formal representation of waves.
Just so. Now, what are your conclusions, Father?
Well, that here we have the legend of the Spaniard, plain enough. Here he is, holding up his arms and cursing in the sea. And here beside him are these 2 curses, the wrecked ship and the burning of Pendragon Tower. Oh, yes, there we are. Ah, he's your Spaniard without a doubt.
Oh, my friend, you're on a wrong tack. Now, that sort of half-man is quite common in heraldry, as indeed is the galley. In the case of the tower, it would be more heraldic to suppose it to be crowned with laurel, rather than with ribbons of fire.
It seems rather odd that it should so exactly confirm the old legend, does it not?
Ah, but you don't know how much of the old legend may have been made up from these old figures. Besides, it isn't the only old legend. Fanshawe here will tell you that there are other versions of the tale.
Yes, and rather horrible ones. One story has it that the Admiral's ancestor had the unfortunate Spaniard cut in two. And that would fit the picture also.
Yes, I suppose it could.
Now, that alone would go to show how little these unhappy coincidences really signify.
How do you mean, Admiral?
Well, it so happens that there was no thunder and lightning at all in the 2 or 3 shipwrecks I know of in our family.
Then you don't think there is anything in the tales of the tower in flames?
Well, there are tales, of course. Some of them I don't deny. The evidence is as decent as one ever gets for such things. Someone saw a blaze hereabouts as he walked home through the woods. A shepherd up there on the moors thought he saw a flame hovering over Pendragon Tower. But a damp dab of mud like this confounded island seems the last place one would look for fires,
Well, what's that fire over there, I wonder?
A fire where?
In those woods, along the river bank.
By Jove, he's right. There's a funnel of blue smoke rising from the trees. Do you see?
Gypsies, that's all. They've been camping about here for a week. Poachers. Oh, damn lot of them. Yes, well, you want your dinner. Let's go into the house.
One moment, sir. Listen. There. That hissing noise, quite near the island. It sounds very much like fire.
It sounds very much like what it is. Some skiff, or perhaps a canoe passing by. There's a number of them on the river.
It's that girl again, Fanshawe. I can just make out her canoe against that light patch of water.
So it is.
What brings her to the island, I wonder?
Curiosity, possibly?
Do you have many strangers here, Admiral?
Fortunately not. No patience with people who stick their noses in when they're not wanted. Yes, Benetta, what is it?
I was about to announce that dinner is served, sir.
Right, thank you, Benetta. Come on in, gentlemen. You'll find no frills nor furbelows here, but we pride ourselves in having things pretty ship-shape in spite of that.
And indeed, the dining room our friends entered was as nautical as the cabin of a ship, although its note, if Father Brown's memory is to be relied on, was that of a modern rather than an Elizabethan captain. Cases of stuffed birds of exotic colour, fantastic shells from the Pacific, and a collection of native spears and other implements were displayed against the walls. By contrast, a number of antiquated cutlasses were arranged in a trophy over the fireplace, while beside them hung an ancient map adorned with tritons and little ships dotted about a curly, formalized sea. It was this map which particularly attracted the attention of Father Brown.
Most curious, this old chart of yours, Admiral. 16th century, would you say?
Yes, thereabouts.
Ah, yes. Exceedingly interesting.
Yeah, but tell me, what do you think of my collection of South American birds? They're quaintly colored, are they not?
Yes, indeed. Such brilliant plumage. Various species of hummingbirds, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, for the most part.
Ah, yes, I recognize this little fellow here. Ariok name is Cupriaventus, or copper-bellied puff-leg hummingbird, is he not? A descriptive, if somewhat cumbersome cognomen for such a tiny creature. A native of Santa Fe de Bogota, I believe.
Oh, I perceive you're an expert in other matters besides antiquities, Father Brown.
Oh, no expert, Admiral, but a keen amateur ornithologist. It has always struck me as odd that the male bird should be so much more gorgeously caparisoned than his mate. Now, this Trogon, for example, with his long, delicate feathers, could anything be more splendid?
The resplendent Trogon, eh? That's what they call him, you know. It's said that the old Mexican kings forbade the wearing of those long feathers and plumage to any but themselves.
So I have read. And here he is, our calores resplendens, in all his glory. Oh, magnificent indeed.
I fancy the Admiral's collection of native weapons would be more to your taste, eh, Flambeau? Flambeau is an expert swordsman, Admiral, and has made a study of weaponry.
Oh, indeed. Oh, what do you make of these, sir?
Well, I recognize some of them. The spears, for example. But what in heaven's name are these strange, queerly shaped objects? Instruments of torture, would you say? And these? I wonder if the savages used them to kill or to cook their enemies.
Both, I imagine. Come, we must not let our soup grow cold.
Besides the butler, Admiral Pendragon's only servants were two young Negroes, quaintly clad in tight uniforms of yellow. The colour and little neat coattails of these bipeds suggested the word canary to our friend Father Brown, and so connected them in his mind with southern travel. Towards the end of dinner, they took their yellow clothes and black faces out of the room, leaving only the black clothes and yellow face of the butler.
I'm rather sorry, Admiral, that you take the subject of the Spaniard's curse so lightly.
Oh, why?
Well, the truth is I brought these friends of mine here with the idea of their helping you. Don't you really believe in the family story at all?
I don't believe in anything. I prefer the study of these tropical birds of mine to some old wives' tale which can have no bearing either on the present or the future. What do you say, Father Brown?
Well, I agree with you, Admiral. The study of natural history is a most rewarding hobby, and one that has afforded me great pleasure and relaxation in my work.
Excuse me, sir. May I set down the decanters?
Yes, to be sure, Benito. Leave them and the dessert on the table.
Will that be all, sir?
Yes, thank you. We shan't require your presence further.
Very good, sir.
Pass your glass, Fanshawe.
Okay.
Please don't think me impertinent, Admiral, but am I right in guessing that you don't want these family affairs of yours talked of before your butler?
Well, I don't know where you got it, but to tell you the truth, I can't stand the fella. Now, Fanshawe here with his fairy tales will say my blood moved against men with that black Spanish-looking hair.
By Jove. So had that girl.
Oh, what's that you say?
Oh, nothing, Admiral. But I'm told that many Cornish people have that dark Spanish look.
Oh, possibly. Oh, well, I hope it'll all end tonight when my nephew comes back safe from his ship.
Your nephew Walter, sir? I didn't know you were expecting him.
Oh, don't look so surprised, my boy. Yes. I don't suppose any of you will understand unless I tell you a story.
Oh.
You see, my father had two sons. Now, I remained a bachelor. But my older brother married and had a son who became a sailor like all the rest of us and who will inherit this estate.
You mean he will succeed you here, sir?
No, not a bit of it. I'm no more than his tenant at Pendragon. My father was a strange man who somehow combined Fanshawe's superstitions with a good deal of skepticism. And after my first few voyages, he conceived an idea which he thought might finally settle whether the curse of the Pendragons was truth or trash.
Oh, and how did he hope to do that?
Well, he thought that if all the Pendragons sailed about anyhow, there'd be too much chance of natural catastrophes to prove anything. Mm-hmm. If, on the other hand, we went to sea in strict order of succession to the property, he thought it might show if any connected fate followed the family as a family.
There's something to be said for that.
You think so? Well, I considered it a silly notion. And I quarreled with my father pretty heartily. After all, I was an ambitious man and was left to the last, coming by succession after my nephew.
Both your father and brother died at sea, I fear.
Yes, by one of those brutal accidents on which are built all the lying mythologies of mankind. They were both shipwrecked.
Dear me, how sad.
And my father, coming up this coast out of the Atlantic, was washed up on these Cornish rocks. My brother's ship was sunk too, near these self-same rocks on the voyage home from Tasmania. His body was never found. Neither of them could swim, you see. Nor, for that matter, can I.
What a tragic tale.
Yes, but a perfectly natural mishap. Lots of people besides Pendragons have been drowned at sea. Nevertheless, it set this forest of superstition on fire, and men saw the blazing tar everywhere. That's why I say it'll be all right when Walter returns.
Well, let us hope that may be so.
Yes, well, the girl he was engaged to was coming today, but I was so afraid of some chance delay frightening her that I wired her not to come until she heard from me. Give me a glass, Father.
Sure.
But he's practically sure to be here sometime tonight. And then it'll all end in smoke. Tobacco smoke. We'll crack that old lie when we crack another bottle of this wine.
And a remarkably good wine it is.
Yes.
Oh, dear me. I'm afraid I've spilt some on the tablecloth. Oh, I most sincerely beg your pardon, Admiral. As you see, I'm a very bad wine bibber.
What's the matter, Father Brown? You've gone quite white. Well, your hand is shaking as though you'd just seen one of your ghosts.
Well, you see, it's nothing at all. Just for a moment, I fancied I saw a woman's face looking in at us from the window. Oh, dear. It's my imagination, of course. I'm so ashamed of my carelessness.
Oh, let me refill your glass.
Oh, thank you. Admiral, will you do me a favor?
What's that?
Let me and my friends, if they like, stop in that tower of yours just for tonight. You see, in my business, you know, you're an exorcist almost before anything else.
I tell you, there's nothing in it. This business is perfectly natural. There's no curse in it at all.
Well, in that case, there can't be any objection to my sleeping in your delightful summer house.
The idea is utterly ridiculous.
Well, you forgive me, sir, but it seems to me that you are not quite so easy about the blazing tower as you try to be.
Very well. But you do it at your own peril.
Father Brown, I don't believe you have the slightest intention of going to bed either in the tower or anywhere else.
We've been dawdling about for hours, watching you brush a few fallen leaves from the grass. Couldn't you postpone your activities until the morning? Our host retired to his room long ago.
Never mind. There's always some little thing to be done in the garden that is helpful to others. I know. Let's go and water the flowers.
Not at this time of night, surely.
Well, look, there's yards and yards of garden hose over here, all ready to be unrolled. That's it. And now to find the tap. Ah, this looks like it. The red tulips before the yellow ones, I think. They look a bit dry, don't they?
Look out, Samson. You cut off that tulip's head.
Oh, dear me. Mine does seem to be rather a kill or cure sort of watering. It's a pity I haven't got a spade. Oh, you should have seen me with a spade.
I'd rather not see you armed with such a dangerous tool.
Well, talking of tools, Flambeau, have you got that sword stick you always carry?
Of course.
Good. And Sir Cecil could have the cutlass the Admiral threw away by the fence here. It's still there, I suppose.
Yes, here it is. But why not?
Never mind about that now. You just keep it by you. May be needed. Oh, how grey everything looks.
The mist is rising from the river.
Ah, well, I'd better get on with my watering while there's time.
Here, put down that hose, will you?
What?
You put down that damned hose before I do you mischief.
Look out, Brown. He's brandishing a rake.
Put him down, I say, and go to your...
Oh, I see. I do apologize. I'm most fearfully clumsy, I'm afraid. I'd no idea I would. Oh, dear. Oh, very dreadful. I've hit a man.
Oh, damn you for a blasting nincompoop. I'll pay you out for this. Just you wait.
Hadn't you better put that hose down, Father Brown, before you do any more damage?
Quiet. Listen.
What is it, Brown?
Your river mist has a rum smell.
Oh, by heavens, it has. But you can't mean...
One of the Admiral's predictions is coming true tonight. This story is going to end in smoke. Quick, we've no time to lose. Follow me and play out that hose behind me as I run.
Even as Father Brown spoke, a rose-red light suddenly glowed beyond the trees. As they raced towards the tower, the flames seemed to burst into blossom like some gigantic flower, and the noise of crackling, like the laughter of 1,000 devils, filled their ears.
Great heavens, what's this? The sign of the blazing tower. Give me a hand with the hose. Hold it so while I direct the nozzle into the heart of the blaze.
Oh, lucky we hadn't gone to bed. I suppose there's no chance of the fire spreading to the house.
The wooden fence that might have carried it was cut away. You don't mean...
Oh, well, at least no one can be killed then.
Oh, a curious kind of tower. When it takes to killing people, it always kills people who are somewhere else. All right, Sir Cecil. You can leave go of the hose, thank you.
Right.
I can manage well enough on my own now.
Come on, will you?
Hey!
Come on, you perishing pair of blackamoors. Only stand there gulping.
Well, who's that?
They foreigners been up to no good down along. It'd be our job to stop them. Now, come on, I say.
He's the gardener again, and he needs business. He's waving a cutlass.
And he's got those two negroes with him armed, too, and I'm a Dutchman.
Men, you've had your orders. Now stop that damn parson from his infernal meddling. Get down there and stop him.
Ah, so I was right. Look, you two. Knock these fellows down somehow and tie them up. There's rope down by that pile of faggots. They want to take away my nice hose.
What about the fire?
Don't argue, man. Do as I say and leave the blaze to me.
Righto, come on, Flambeau. Let's teach those fellows a lesson.
No bloodshed, mind. Oh, dear. Dear me. How very inconvenient, just as I was getting the fire under control.
Now, look here, you've no right.
Right, all right. You'd better drop that cutlass there now.
Damn if I do. Have it you for a middling foreigner.
All right, Bencher. You look out for the other two. I'll deal with this fellow.
Yeah.
Right.
Go on, you blockhead. Don't let him get the better of you. Use your cutlass.
Father Brown, intent on quelling the blaze, never turned his head to look at the strange fight between the foes and friends of the mysterious fire. He almost felt the island shake when Flambeau collided with the huge gardener, but he only imagined how they wrestled and fought. He heard the crash as the Cornishman fell senseless, and his friend's cry of triumph as he dashed onto the first Negro, and the cries of both the blacks as Flambeau and Fanshawe finally bound them. Flambeau's enormous strength had more than redressed the odds in the fight, especially as the fourth man still hovered near the house, only a shadow and a voice in the darkness.
Tremaine, do you hear me?
Go after the other fellow and tie him up too.
Come on, Flambeau.
Hello there! Come on, we're bringing help!
Come on.
The girl in the canoe.
Keep those buckets filled, men!
Right,
We're not too late, are we?
Well, no, but you're only just in time. I'm holding the flames at bay, but no more.
We're lining up a chain of buckets from the river. My friends here know exactly what's to be done. That's right, Dan. One bucketful after the other, and pass the empty pails back to be refilled.
Wait down this. Here, there's another one here, Ezekiel. Oh, that's got him. Keep dousing, man. The fire's still smoldering.
Oh,
Come on,
thank God. I believe we've done it.
We have. It's only smoking now. The tower is safe.
Not under the tower, I hope. But tell me, young lady, how came you on the scene so opportunely?
I saw the flames from my canoe as I was passing the gypsies' camp. I called to them for help. First, we thought it was only the woods that had caught fire. But then Benetto came running down to tell us that the tower itself was alight.
Benetto?
The butler from Pendragon House. He's an old friend of ours. Mine and Walter's.
Then you're the young lady I saw peering through the window a while ago.
Yes. What in heaven's name was that?
I can only guess, my dear, but I fancy it may have signaled the end of one story, and God willing, the beginning of another.
But I tell you, Father Brown, it was horrible. Like the chase of some wild animal. He ran before us, racing madly round the island as he sought to escape. And as we closed in on him, he leapt onto the highest point of the river bank.
For a moment, he stood still and turned towards us. The blaze from the tower lit up his face, and we saw it was the Admiral.
The Admiral?
Then, with a terrible cry, he disappeared with a splash into the water.
Oh, no.
There was nothing we could do.
Nor can we do more, I fear. He has been washed down to the rocks by now, where he has sent so many others. He knew the use of a family legend.
Oh, don't talk in these parables, Brown. Can't you put it simply in words of one syllable?
Yes, don't you remember? Both eyes bright, sheem all right. One eye blinks and down her sinks.
The old rhyme.
You mean that I thought of asking this young lady, if it were morning yet, to look through that telescope of the Admiral's and scan the river mouth. She might have seen something to interest her, the sign of the ship. And if she had looked nearer, she might perhaps have seen the sign of the half-man. For though Mr. Walter Pendragon is certainly safe by now, he may very well have had to wade ashore.
Oh, for heaven's sake, explain yourself.
Well, I'll do my best. Mr. Pendragon has been within a shave of another shipwreck, and would never have escaped it if this lady hadn't had the sense to suspect the Admiral's telegram and come down to watch him. But don't let us talk of the Admiral. It's enough to say that whenever this tower rarely caught fire, the spark on the horizon always looked like the twin light on the coast lighthouse.
Ah, and that is how the father and brother died, eh? The wicked uncle very nearly got his estate after all.
So it would seem. But now that our task is ended, should we not thank this young lady for her timely help? And having wished her Godspeed, seek what opportunity for sleep remains to us aboard the yacht.
You are very kind, sir. But it is I who should thank you and your friends. And that I do with all my heart. Listen. It's Walter. Walter. It can be no one else. The people are bringing him home in triumph. Oh, I must go. I must go to meet him.
Well, now, how about a cigar before we turn in? Father Brown?
Thank you.
Flambeau?
With pleasure.
What amazes me is that none of my crew saw or heard anything of the fire.
Fast asleep in their bunks, no doubt.
I suppose so. Well, look out, Father Brown. You've dropped cigar ash in your trousers.
Oh, that's not cigar ash. That's from the fire. You don't think so because you're both smoking cigars. Do you know that's just the way I got my first faint suspicion about the chart?
Do you mean Pendragon's chart of the Pacific Islands?
Yes. You only thought it was a chart of the Pacific Islands. Put a feather with a fossil and a bit of coral and everyone will think it's a specimen. And put the same feather with a ribbon and an artificial flower, and most men will think it's for a lady's hat. You saw that chart among tropic birds and shells, and therefore you thought it was a map of the Pacific Islands. It was not. It was a map of this river.
Oh, this river? But how do you know?
Well, I saw the rock you thought was like a dragon, and the one like Merlin. And
you seem to have noticed a lot while you were in that dining room. We thought you were rather abstracted.
Well, I was seasick. That's all. I felt simply horrible. But feeling horrible has nothing to do with not seeing things.
Do you think that most men would have seen what you saw? Brown, I'm asking you, would other men have seen all you saw? Well, I'll be damned. The fellow's asleep.
That was The Perishing of the Pendragons by G.K. Chesterton, adapted by Archie Campbell. With Leslie French as Father Brown, William Rushton as G.K. Chesterton, and Francis de Wolfe as Flambeau. Other parts were Sir Cecil Fanshawe, Hugh Ross, Admiral Pendragon, Manning Wilson, Tremaine, Vernon Joyner, Benetto, John Baker, and the girl in the canoe, Julie Hallam. Other parts were played by Timothy Bateson, David Timson, and Alan Rowe. Production was by Christopher Venning.
We continue our celebration of the birth of G.K. Chesterton 100 years ago with another Father Brown story, adapted for radio by Archie Campbell, with Leslie French as Father Brown and William Rushton as G.K. Chesterton himself, who narrates the stories. Our story today is called The Queer Feet.
If you, my dear listener, meet a member of that select club, the 12 True Fishermen, entering the Vernon Hotel for the annual club dinner, you will observe that his evening coat is green and not black. If, supposing you have the audacity to address such an exalted being, you ask him why, he will probably answer that he does so in order to avoid being taken for a waiter. You will then retire crushed. If, to pursue the same vein of improbable conjecture, you were to meet my mild and hard-working little friend, Father Brown, and were to ask him what he regarded as the most singular luck of his life, he would probably reply that upon the whole his best stroke was at that oligarchical institution, the Vernon Hotel, where he had averted a crime and perhaps saved a soul merely by listening to a few footsteps in a passage. As it is unlikely that you will ever rise high enough in the social world to find the 12 true fishermen, or that you will sink low enough among slums and criminals to find Father Brown, I fear you will never hear the story at all, unless you hear it from me. You may wonder how so ordinary a person as Father Brown came to find himself in such a place as the Vernon Hotel. The explanation is simple. On the afternoon of the club dinner, one of the waiters, an Italian, had been struck down with a paralytic stroke, and his employer, Mr. Lever, who, despite his dislike of difficulties, was a not unkindly man, had consented to send for the nearest popish priest. Obeying the summons as speedily as his short legs and a penny omnibus could carry him, Father Brown reached the square in Belgravia, where at a corner, and almost as if by accident, the Vernon Hotel discreetly stood. With no sign of trepidation, he mounted the steps of that old-fashioned yet eminently distinguished establishment, and was greeted on the threshold by a gentleman of equally distinguished but slightly more flamboyant appearance.
Good afternoon. I am Mr. Lever, the proprietor. Can I assist you?
If you would be so kind. My name is Brown, Father Brown. I believe my presence has been requested. Some poor soul seeking the last...
Ah, yes, to be sure. Luigi, poor fellow. Most unfortunate. And on this night of all nights, to lose one of my best waiters, most unfortunate.
Unfortunate, certainly, but surely...
We pride ourselves on the perfection of the service we provide, particularly on such an occasion as tonight.
Tonight?
Yes, indeed. The annual dinner of the Club of the 12 True Fishermen, a most exclusive affair.
No doubt, but might I trouble you to
Mr.
take...
Audley, the club's president, is fastidious in the matter of service, as indeed is the young Duke of Chester, his second in command. Most unfortunate.
You have my sympathy, sir, but might I trespass on your kindness?
As you see, we are not a large hotel. Large, that is, in the usual sense of the word. But the club would never consent to dine anywhere else. Privacy. Absolute privacy is the keynote of the whole gathering.
No, quite. But if you would be so good as to...
Normally, you see, we have a dining room staff of 15. That is, one waiter to each of our 12 guests, together, of course, with my maître d'hôtel, my sommelier, and the man who is charged with the care of the silver. 15 in all.
Oh, that number would appear ample, but...
Silver, did I say? I should more properly have referred to it as regalia. You may perhaps have read of the celebrated set of fish knives and forks, for example, which are, as it were, the insignia of the society. Each one being exquisitely wrought in silver in the form of a fish, and each one loaded at the hilt with one large pearl. A unique and well-nigh priceless collection, you will gather, and one which invariably adorns the table on these occasions. Excuse me. Yes, what is it, William? Yes, the strong room key, to be sure. I will see to the silver myself, William, since tonight we are somewhat hard-pressed.
All this is most interesting, but I really do think I should...
Of course. I was forgetting the call that brought you here. William.
Sir?
William, this reverend gentleman is here to bring comfort and solace to Luigi in the hour of his affliction. Pray, conduct him to the poor fellow's chamber.
Lever, will you kindly follow me, sir? This way.
It is not for us to surmise what the waiter Luigi confessed to Father Brown, but apparently it involved him in writing out a note or statement for the conveying of some message or the righting of some wrong. Descending from the servants' quarters, Father Brown discovered the hotel proprietor waiting for him in the hall.
And how did you find the poor fellow?
In extremis, I fear, but I trust much comforted in spirit.
The doctor is with him now.
He could not be in better hands. And Dr. Richardson is an excellent physician. I am most grateful to you, Father Brown, for your kind offices.
Do not thank me, please. Such ministrations are all part of our vocation.
Of course, of course.
I hesitate to trouble you, sir, but would it be possible to provide me with a room and writing materials?
A room? A room in which to write? Dear me, that does present a problem. You see, we have no such place in the hotel. Our few resident guests go at once to their own private apartments and only descend for meals. Besides, our 12 crew fishermen would be startled to find a new face in the hotel on the night of their dinner. A mere glimpse of such a person might precipitate a crisis in the club.
Well, I do not wish to put you to inconvenience, Mr. Lever, but it is imperative that I make out a statement while my memory is still fresh.
I see. Yes. Well, there is, of course, the receptionist's office, which you observe abuts onto this vestibule, but that would hardly be suitable. Nor, indeed, would the gentleman's cloakroom just beyond it. Yes, difficult, most difficult. Wait a moment. I have an idea, yes. Would you follow me, please? This way along the passage, please. Please, come in. This is a small sanctum of which I occasionally make use when interviewing clients on matters of delicacy and so forth. It is at your disposal for the next 30 minutes or so.
Oh, thank you. This would be admirable for my purpose.
You will find pen, ink, and paper on the table.
Excellent.
As you see, this room leads on the one side to the office and on the other to the rear of the cloakroom. You will be quite undisturbed here, but to ensure your privacy, I shall lock the door behind me when I go. Now, if you'll excuse me, I shall take my leave. I fancy the first of tonight's guests are already assembling.
Dear me, the room seems strangely dark. However, there should be enough light from this glass partition to enable me to complete my task. Now, what have we here? Ah, yes, pen, paper, and an inkpot, as he said. Well, then, to work. Final depositions and wishes of Luigi Castiglione, waiter, age 47, to be carried out in the event of his death.
Ah, Gordon, my dear fellow. Very pleasant to have you with us once again. Not seen you since Goodwood, I fancy.
No, by Joe. After a week sailing at Cowes, I went up north.
Time for the 12th, I take it.
Naturally. At least one of old McGurkut's moors for the season.
Birds plentiful this year?
Never better. Strong on the wing, too.
Splendid work. Ah, Duke. You've not forgotten us, then.
Oh, rather not. Wouldn't miss one of our club dinners for all the world. I came along from the house, as a matter of fact.
Good show.
I would have been here earlier if the PM hadn't buttonholed me just as I was leaving.
Yes, the trouble with you radicals, thick as thieves and stick together like limpets. Still, better late than never. What do you say, Audley? Yes, well, our little gathering would hardly be complete without our Vice President. I'm glad to see you, Algy, my boy.
Yeah, how do you do, sir?
How's your dear mother? Keeping well, I trust?
Pretty well, thank you, sir.
Good.
In Yorkshire at the moment. Taking the waters at Harrogate, don't you know?
Oh, they can prove most beneficial, I'm told.
Oh, nothing like 'em, Audley. Did my liver a power of good. You should try 'em yourself one of these days.
Yes, no doubt, no doubt. But as you know, I seldom move from London.
Yeah, gone to earth in your rooms in Albany, eh, old boy? You bachelors certainly know what's good for you.
Yes, well, I dare say you're right. However, I have a notion the flesh pots are awaiting us. Shall we adjourn to the terrace if you're ready, gentlemen? Yes. I have it. You lead the way, young Algy.
Oh, after you, sir.
All right. Age before beauty, eh?
Aren't you with a cord again this winter, Colonel?
Of course I am. What do you think?
Finally, I wish to thank all my friends and colleagues in the Vernon Hotel who have helped to make my years in London such happy ones. Well, that seems about all. I don't think there's any more to add. Well, so much the better. It's really getting too dark in here to write. Well, what's the time, I wonder? How quiet the place is. One could hear a pin drop. Here the hour for dinner must be drawing on. Can that chap Lever have forgotten me? Ah, perhaps this is him now. No, one of the waiters, probably. Seems in a hurry, too. Well, what am I supposed to do? Ring a bell? I don't see one. Well, I can't stay locked in here all night. Curious. Now, why should those footsteps be so regularly irregular? Boom, 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 boom. Always the same rhythm. Oh, that's odd. That's distinctly odd. Boom, 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 boom. Precisely the same routine. Always the change of step as he passes the door. Boom, 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 boom. Bum, 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 bum. I can't make it out. It's a mystery to me. It's a perfect mystery. There they are again. Obviously, that's the same pair of feet, the same pair of boots. I can't understand it. I simply can't understand it. I've seen men run in order to jump. I've seen men run in order to slide, but why on earth should a man run in order to walk? Bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum. Or again, why should he walk in order to run? Bum, 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 bum. Ah, the man, whoever he is either walking very fast down one half of the corridor in order to walk very slow down the other half, or he's walking very slow at one end to have the rapture of walking fast at the other. There it is again. What the devil is the fellow up to? Is it perhaps some kind of religious dance? Or could it be some new kind of scientific exercise? I wonder. If it's not a waiter, who could it be? That's certainly not the step of the proprietor. Men of his type usually walk with a rapid waddle, more like this. Rum, ba, rum, ba, rum, ba. It's not exactly the gait of a well-trained waiter. When they move rapidly, they also move silently, particularly in an exclusive establishment like the Vernon Hotel. Supposing, however, it is a waiter, why only one pair of feet? Where are his fellows? If this corridor leads, as it may well do, to the servants' quarters, why are not others also passing to and fro? Or does our friend enjoy the unique privilege of being allowed to use this passage as a shortcut to the kitchen? It's puzzling. Decidedly puzzling.
Attention, grand jeune homme. Tu ne veux pas t'brûler, eh? Ah, sacré bleu! Vite, Jean, passe-moi la négresse.
Oui, monsieur Claude.
Et la spatule en même temps, dépêche-toi.
Oui, monsieur Claude. Et voici.
Non, idiot, la spatule en bois. Vite, 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 vite.
Je m'excuse, monsieur Claude. Voici la spatule.
Enfin! Ça va mieux, saucier?
Oui, chef.
La sauce mornay, est-elle prête?
Bien sûr, chef. Je l'ai déjà faite. Voyez.
Permettez-moi. Pas mal, mais encore un petit peu du fromage, pensez-vous? Un soupçon, c'est tout?
D'accord, chef. Je le ferai tout de suite.
Alors, maître d'hôtel, vous êtes revenu? Tout va bien sur la terrasse? Les pêcheurs, fishermen, ils sont bien contents. They are happy.
Very happy. The dinner's going splendidly.
Les hors d'oeuvres, they were enjoyed.
With rapture, Monsieur Claude. His Grace consumed his portion with a special zest.
And the consommé madrilène, did it also please our guests?
Enormously. Mr. Audley made a point of offering his congratulations to the chef. He had never tasted anything so good, he said.
That is praise indeed. That gentleman is a gourmet. Un vrai connoisseur. Attention, imbécile! Veux-tu renverser le bain-marie? Attention, je te dis, ce pot-là est chaud, alors?
Bien entendu, Monsieur Claude.
Zut alors! Qu'est-ce que tu as fait? Mon Dieu! Mon Dieu, je n'ai jamais rencontré un type plus bête que toi. Jamais! Va-t'en! Fiche-moi la paix. Clear out.
As you, being an attentive listener, will already have gathered, the Vernon was, and still is, a small and somewhat inconvenient hotel. However, one inconvenience in particular was held to be of vital importance to the Club of the 12 True Fishermen. The fact that only 24 people could dine in the place at once. The only big dinner table, the celebrated terrace table, which overlooked one of the most exquisite old gardens in London, provided seats for exactly that number. Since the members of the club numbered only 12, they could thus occupy the terrace in the most luxurious style of all, being ranged along the inner side of the table with no one opposite, commanding an uninterrupted view of the garden, its flower beds and shrubberies still discernible in the fading light. The first two courses of the dinner, served smoothly and silently by a small army of soft-footed waiters, had proceeded with placid success. Now, amid the lustre of fine silver and glass, with the famous pearl-studded knives and forks already set, and glowing in the light of the crimson-shaded candles, the 12 true men sat in blissful expectation of the next, the most important, well-nigh sacred course, the traditional fish pie, that monstrous and fabulous edifice of culinary art created by the chef, Monsieur Claude, in person, and named by him in the curious French used only by cooks, le pudding suprême aux délices de la pêche.
No place like the Vernon, if you ask me.
I agree. Their wines and cooking couldn't be better anywhere in Europe. The Niersteiner, it's first rate.
Their bubbly will be even better, mark my words. Clicquot 1911. How about that? But you're right, Colonel. They can have their Ritzes and their Carltons. Give me the good old Vernon every time.
Certainly one could hardly hope to enjoy a more agreeable prospect.
That's true.
That garden, even in this light, the trees, the flowers. I doubt if anything like it exists in the whole of London.
Talking of flowers reminds me. Poor Charlie Ilminster's just lost his head gardener, he tells me. Been with him for 20 years. Very cut up about it.
Must be.
He can't find a good head gardener for love or money these days.
So I imagine. I hear they've had to close 2 of their hothouses at Chatsworth. We simply can't find the chaps to look after them. All the youngsters are emigrating, it appears.
Oh, by the way, what's happened to young Abercrombie? He was a keen gardener at one time.
That's true. Didn't you know? He's all post in Oslo at the moment.
No.
Yeah, been there about 6 months. Unpaid attaché, don't you know?
Yes, and taken up salmon fishing in a big way, it seems. Landed a 45-pounder last week. Yes. Pleased as punch about it.
I'd always thought of Abercrombie as a dry fly while I'm... Hadn't he a beat on the test at one time?
Yes, indeed. Wild horses wouldn't drag him away from it.
Once a fisherman, always a fisherman, I say.
Which seems to sound an appropriate note for the arrival of tonight's pièce de résistance. Unless I'm mistaken, the famous fish pie is about to be presented for our delectation. Excellent. Quite excellent.
Absolutely splendid.
You can't do this fish pie anywhere but here.
Nowhere assuredly except here. It was represented to me that the
Excuse me, sir.
Anglais... what? Oh, yes, my plate. Yes, cleared it by all means. I've quite...
Thank you, sir.
Yes, now, where was I? Oh, yes, of course, as I was saying... It was represented to me that the same sort of thing could be done at the Café Anglais. I
accepted the challenge, unfortunately for me. Nothing like it. Nothing like it.
It's overrated place, Cafe Anglais. Thoroughly overrated, I always say.
No, I don't know, Colonel. It's only good for some things. Well, for instance, you can't beat...
Excuse me, sir.
Oh, I say. That waiter, Johnny, seems in a devil of a hurry. I'd hardly lay down my knife and fork before he lifts me a plate in front of my very eyes. Well, hang it all, a fellow expects to be allowed time to digest what he's eaten. I have a good mind to call him back. Hi, waiter. Oh, he seems to have disappeared. Oh, never mind. I say, this bubbly is good, isn't it? Can't beat the widow, eh, Watkins?
No, upon my soul. Capital vintage, capital. Service are always first rate, you know. Unobtrusive, that's what I like about it. Can't stand a lot of fellows fussing about.
No, indeed. No place like it. No place like the Vernon. You know, I recollect that some years ago, it was suggested to me by one of our members.
Bless my soul. What can have happened to that proprietor? I must have been locked in here for the best part of an hour. It's far too dark now to read or even write. That fellow again. I take my oath those steps never belonged to a waiter. They're clearly not levers. There's a swaggering confidence about them, a kind of careless emphasis, I suppose one might call it, that has nothing to do with the obsequious business of hotel keeping. No, those are the steps of a gentleman of Western Europe, and probably one who has never had to work for a living. Back they come. There's something familiar about that strange, swift walking. I've heard it before somewhere, I do declare. But where? In heaven's name, where? No, it's no good. I can't recall it. If only my memory were not quite so bad. No, I can't endure this uncertainty. Somehow or other, I must satisfy my curiosity. Locked, of course. How stupid of me. I've got it. The office next door. There's still a light shining through. Surely someone must be inside. A receptionist, or at least a deputy. No one there. I'll try the door. Locked too. Well, nothing for it. Nothing for it but to possess myself in patience and await release. A prisoner in his cell. Oh, dear. What a situation. Oh, this time he really is in a hurry. But why the tearing excitement? What can have compelled such haste? They've stopped just along the passage. Now, why? The cloakroom, of course. He stopped there. Oh, what a fool I've been not to think of it. Lever mentioned that this room led into it. Good. Oh, my word. Oh, it's dark in here. Dark as pitch. I can't see a thing. There must be another door somewhere. I'll try groping along this wall, and if... Oh, dear. Oh, what is it? Only a common or garden umbrella, but it quite startled me. There we are. No damage done. Now, if I continue slowly along this wall, like this, I should... Oh, I beg your pardon, sir. I didn't see you. Oh, bless my soul, it's just an overcoat. Oh, dear. Oh, and another one. Oh, and another one. Whole cluster of overcoats. Well, there's a glimmer of light over there. I must be getting near the door into the passage. Oh, where's the attendant, I wonder? I don't know where I'm going. I can't see a thing. another step anywhere. That's better. Yes, I can see quite well now. I feel like a mole coming out of his hole. Oh.
Ah, there you are. I couldn't see you behind all those overcoats. I want my hat and coat, please. I find I have to go away at once. Here's my ticket.
Your ticket, sir?
Yes, my ticket, number 39. Be sharp about it, please. I'm in a hurry.
Oh, yes, of course, sir. I'll see to it at once. 39. Ah, here we are. I think these must be yours, sir.
Thank you, my man. I don't appear to have any silver on me, but never mind. You can keep this. Why are you staring at it? Haven't you seen a half-sovereign before?
Yes, but...
I've told you I haven't any silver on me.
I think, sir, that you have some silver in your pocket all the same.
Hang it, if I give you gold, why should you complain?
Because silver is sometimes more valuable than gold. That is in large quantities.
What the devil?
Oh, no, you're choking me. Oh, kindly release me at once.
Stand still, then. I don't want to threaten you, but...
But I do want to threaten you. I want to threaten you with the worm that dieth not, and the fire that is not quenched.
You're a rum sort of cloakroom attendant, I must say.
I am a priest, Monsieur Flambeau.
What? You know my name?
Certainly I know your name. I know more than your name, Monsieur Flambeau. And if you care to cast your mind back some months to a certain encounter on Hampstead Heath, terminating in the recovery of a valuable piece of church property, you may also remember mine.
Father Brown. You are Father Brown?
None other. And what is more, I am ready to hear your confession. Come now, Monsieur Flambeau. I am waiting.
Oh, mon Dieu. Mon Dieu.
In case you, dear listener, may have forgotten or indeed be unaware of the incident to which our friend referred, allow me to refresh your memory. On a previous occasion, Flambeau, that arch-international criminal, had, by the simple expedient of disguising himself as a fellow cleric, stolen from Father Brown a precious silver cross, which our little priest was conveying to an important Eucharistic conference. Happily, a clever ruse, amounting to a stroke of genius, enabled Father Brown not only to salve his stolen property, but to hand the miscreant over to the officers of the law. However, let us not dwell on that story, but return forthwith to the Vernon Hotel, where consternation reigns amongst the staff.
Wilhelm, wo ist du? Here, of course. What's the matter? The fish plates, the silver knives and forks. You have seen them? Oh, certainly I've seen them. Didn't I serve the fish pie? They were all laid out on the table then. On their table they no longer are. What do you mean, no longer are? I thought you'd been ordered to clear them. Yeah, so, then to clear them from the table I go. The fish plates, also the knives and forks, they are already gone. Gone? Gone? What are you talking about? Come, see. What's the hurry? It's the fish service. Have you seen it? No, why? Heinrich here says it's been cleared. Cleared already? But I thought they'd only just finished eating it. Did I? Come on. You see? Nothing there. All gone. Kaputt.
What has gone?
The fish service, Louis. It's vanished. Disappeared.
Disparu? Le service de poisson? Il n'est pas là.
See for yourself.
Tiens, you are right. La table est complètement vide. Oh, nom de Dieu.
But who could have done it?
Now then, what's the trouble?
Oh, Maître D, thank heavens you've come. Look out there, if you please. The table. Well, the fish service. It's gone. Silver and all. Vanished into thin air.
Well, I'll be blowed. Did none of you clear the table?
No, Maître. We didn't have time.
They've not been taken to the pantry?
No, Maître. I've just come from there.
Or carried back to the kitchen?
No. The chef's waiting to serve the next course.
Well, this is serious. I must report the loss to Mr. Lever at once.
I say, isn't it about time they set up the grouse?
Yes, by Jove. There seems to be some sort of hitch in the proceedings.
Beats me. Never had to wait between courses so long before. Where the devil are those waiters? Waiter!
Waiter? Not a bally one in sight.
Yes. You know, it's splendid work young Moocher's doing in Burma.
Yeah, really?
No other nation in the world could have... maitre d'hotel. Now, perhaps you can enlighten us.
Excuse me, sir, but it is most important. Might the proprietor speak to you?
Huh? Well, yes, I suppose so.
Mr. Audley, sir, Mr. Audley, Your
Yes?
Grace. Gentlemen, you will pardon me, I hope, but I have great apprehensions. your fish plates, they are cleared away with a knife and fork on them?
Well, yeah, I hope so.
You see him? You see the waiter who took them away? You know him?
Know the waiter? Certainly not.
That waiter, I never sent him. I know not when or why he come. I send my waiter to take away the plates, and he finds them already gone.
Do you mean that someone has stolen our silver?
I feel that is the case.
Stolen? Our silverfish service? I say, jolly bad show.
Tell me, are all your waiters here?
Yes, they're all here, Colonel. Notice them myself. Always count them as I come in. They look so queer standing up against the wall.
Yes, but surely one can't remember exactly.
I remember exactly, I tell you. There never have been more than 15 waiters at this place, and there were no more than 15 tonight. I'll swear, no more and no less.
You say, Your Grace, you say that you see all my 15 waiters?
As usual, yes. What's the matter with that?
Nothing, Your Grace. Only you did not.
Did not?
No. For one of them is dead upstairs.
Oh, I see. Is there anything we can do?
He has had a priest.
Ah.
If there was a 15th man here, then that 15th fellow was a thief. Now, we've no time to lose. Down at once to the front and back doors and secure everything. Then we'll talk. Those 24 pearls are worth recovering. Come, follow me, every man, jack of you, at the double. Yes? Well, what is it, my man?
Excuse me, gentlemen. Mr. Lever, sir. I've just found the fish plates.
Found them?
Where? On a sideboard. There's a whole pile of them, but there's no silver there. Not a trace of it.
Well, we better divide our forces. You, Lever, take your lot to the front of the building.
Certainly, Colonel.
The rest of you, follow me. This way, down the corridor to the servants' quarters. All of you, follow me.
I say, hold on a second. Or perhaps this cloakroom chap will know something about it. Hello? You in there? Have you seen anyone pass?
Perhaps I have got what you are looking for, gentlemen.
What the devil do you mean?
These.
The fish service. Our silver fish service.
You mean...
Valuable things to deposit in a cloakroom, are they not?
Did you steal those things?
Well, if I did, at least I'm bringing them back again.
But you didn't. Someone else had a hand in this?
To make a clean breast of it, I didn't.
But you know who did?
Yes, I know.
And I've a pretty good idea how he made his escape. Look, Colonel.
What?
That window there with the broken pane.
Ah, yes, the window. The unfortunate man left in something of a hurry.
You know his name?
I don't know his real name, but I know something of his fighting ways and a great deal about his spiritual difficulties. I formed the physical estimate when he was trying to throttle me, and the moral estimate when he repented.
Repented? Oh, I say, how perfectly priceless.
It's odd, isn't it, that a thief should repent when so many who are rich and secure remain hard and frivolous, and without fruit for God or man. There, if you will excuse me, you trespass a little upon my province.
Your province?
My province is a priest, sir.
Damn it all. Fellow's a parson. Should have noticed the dog collar, eh? May I ask, sir, what a priest is doing in charge of a cloakroom?
Ah, that is a longer story. But if any of you gentlemen doubt the penitence as a practical fact, there are your knives and forks. You are the 12 true fishers, and there are all your silver fish. But he has made me a fisher of men.
Did you catch this man?
Yes, I caught him with an unseen hook and an invisible line which is long enough to let him wander to the ends of the world, and still to bring him back with a twitch upon the thread.
Yes. Well, now, gentlemen, as we've been so fortunate in recovering our missing property, I suggest that we repair once again to the festive board. Yes, no doubt our excellent Mr. Lever will have things in hand in less than no time. Are you joining us, Colonel?
You go ahead. I'll be with you presently.
As you please. Come, gentlemen.
Do you know what I'm thinking, Your Reverence?
No, Colonel.
He must have been a clever fellow. But I think I know a cleverer.
He was a clever fellow, but I'm not quite sure of what other you mean.
I mean you, sir. Oh, I don't want to get the fellow jailed. Make yourself easy about that. But I'd give a good many silver forks to know exactly how you fell into this affair and how you got the stuff out of him.
Well, I mustn't tell you anything of the man's identity or his own story, of course. But there's no particular reason why I shouldn't tell you of the mere facts which I found out for myself. You see, Colonel, I was shut up in that small room there doing some writing when I heard a pair of feet in this passage doing a dance that was as queer as the dance of death.
Good heavens.
First came quick, funny little steps like a man walking on tiptoe. And then came slow, careless steps, as of a big man walking about with a cigar. But they were both made by the same feet, I swear. And they came in rotation. First the run, then the walk. Then the walk, and the run again. Now, why, I asked myself, should a man act these two parts at once? One walk I knew. It was just like yours, Colonel. It was the walk of a well-fed gentleman who strolls about rather because he is physically alert than because he is mentally impatient. And I knew that I knew the other walk, too, but I could not remember what it was. Then I heard a clink of plates somewhere, and the answer stood up as plain as St. Peter's. My travels have taken me to Rome, you see. It was the walk of a waiter. Then I thought for a minute and a half more, and I believe I saw the manner of the crime as clearly as if I were going to commit it. A crime is like any other work of art.
Work of art?
Well, don't look so surprised. Crimes are by no means the only works of art that come from the devil's workshop. But every work of art has one indispensable mark. The center of it is simple, however much the fulfillment may be complicated.
Yes, I'm not with you, I fear.
Well, you see, Colonel, the whole of this tale turns on a black coat. This subtle and, in the ordinary course, most profitable crime was built on the plain fact that a gentleman's evening dress is the same as a waiter's. All the rest was acting. Oh, thundering good acting, too.
I'm still not sure that I understand.
This archangel of impudence who stole your forks walked up and down this passage 20 times in the blaze of all the lights, in the glare of all the eyes, and everywhere he went, he seemed to be there by right. Whenever he came among you gentlemen, he came in the lightning style of a waiter, with bent head, flapping table, napkin, and flying feet. He shot out onto the terrace. He did something to the tablecloth and shot back again towards the office and the waiters' quarters. By the time he had come under the eyes of the other waiters, he had become another man. He strolled among the servants with the absent-minded nonchalance which they have all seen in their patrons. But his one bad moment came when all the waiters stood in a row. But even then he contrived to lean against the wall just around the corner in such a way that for that important instant the waiters thought him a gentleman, while the gentleman thought him a waiter. The rest went like winking. If any waiter caught him away from the table, that waiter thought him a languid aristocrat. He had only to time himself 2 minutes before the fish was cleared, become a swift servant, and clear it himself. He put the plates down on a sideboard, he stuffed the silver in his breast pocket, and he ran like a hare till he came to the cloakroom. There he had only to be a plutocrat again, a plutocrat called away suddenly on business. He had only to give his ticket to the cloakroom attendant and go out again elegantly as he had come in. Only I happened to be the cloakroom attendant.
What did you do to him? What did he tell you?
I beg your pardon. Now that is where the story ends.
I think I understand his professional trick, but I don't seem to have got hold of yours.
Well, I must be going.
I'll come along with you so far.
Come along, Colonel. I've been looking for you everywhere. The dinner's going again in spanking style, and old Audley's got to make a speech in honour of the forks being saved. We want to start some new ceremony, don't you know, to commemorate the occasion. I say, you really got the goods back for us. What do you suggest?
Well, Duke, I should suggest that henceforth we wear green coats instead of black. One never knows what mistakes may arise when one looks so much like a waiter.
Hang it all, Colonel. A gentleman never looks like a waiter.
Nor a waiter like a gentleman, I suppose. Reverend Sir, your friend must have been very smart to act the gentleman.
Yes, it must be very hard work to be a gentleman. But do you know, I have sometimes thought it may be almost as laborious to be a waiter. Good evening to you both. No, don't bother. I'll see myself out. Thank you.
And with that, my friend Father Brown buttoned up his commonplace overcoat, took his commonplace umbrella from the stand, and pushed open the heavy doors of that palace of pleasure. The golden gates closed behind him, and he went at a brisk walk through the damp, dark streets in search of a penny omnibus.
That was The Queer Feet by G.K. Chesterton, adapted for radio by Archie Campbell. You heard Leslie French as Father Brown, William Rushton as G.K. Chesterton, and Francis de Wolfe as Flambeau. Mr. Lever was played by Harry Hankin, the Duke of Chester by Nigel Lambert, Colonel Proud by Timothy Bateson, Mr. Audley by Manning Wilson, William by Alan Rowe, the French chef by Hugh Ross, his apprentice by David Timpson, and the maître d'hôtel by Leslie Heritage. Other parts were played by members of the cast. Production was by Christopher Venning.